Chapter 763. I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. Diablo coldly interrupted Adelaide's opening speech. Adelaide bowed slightly and continued, "The new epidemic food is ready. After eating the epidemic food, it's not as simple as an incurable disease. Normal people will have a high fever and be weak for 3 days after eating the epidemic food. After 3 days, they will return to normal. After that, there will be an incubation period of 7 to 15 days. When the incubation period is over, these people who eat the epidemic food will suddenly die. That's it?" Diablo turned his head slightly and glanced at Adelaide from the corner of his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "You should know that these scumbags who dare to go against our great master can survive without a physical body. You poisoned them to death. Essentially, it is meaningless. He paused and clenched his teeth. "After wasting so much time and resources, is this how you repay our great master's trust? Diablo, my revered king, I've always said that your biggest problem is your impatience. If you are willing to make a small change, our great master will trust you even more." Adelaide's skeletal face twisted into a sinister smile. During the incubation period, all living things that the carriers come in contact with will also be infected by this terrible disease and become new carriers. After the outbreak of the disease, although only the physical body will die, it is not that simple. The dead carriers will be transformed into all kinds of undead soldiers by my necromancy magic. They will madly attack all living things that they can sense, killing and transforming them. Only then did Diablo's expression lighten up a little, but it was only by a little. As a demon who was proficient in all kinds of necromancy magic, Diablo knew very well what necromancy magic was. These newborn undead soldiers were not enough to deal a destructive blow to the Sky Demon army. Their biggest use was to annoy the Sky Demon army. "Your eyes are making me shiver, my revered king." Adelaide laughed with a weird voice and said in a deep voice, "I never said that these undead creatures are my proudest ability, did I? It was the carrier of the disease that was spreading like crazy. These undead are only used to detain the Sky Demon army and prevent them from directly attacking the northern frontier. Before that, you should first think about how to prevent the carriers who may have eaten the epidemic food from coming into contact with the subordinates of the Great Master before the outbreak of the first incubation period. This plague was ineffective against demons who were proficient in necromancy, but it was incomparably fatal to humans and the Sky Demon who possessed human bodies. Once such a plague broke out, the defensive lines set up by the northern frontier would instantly become a joke." Adelaide was like a lunatic. This was the conclusion shared by Diablo and Lin Yuan. Strictly speaking, this monster that Lin Yuan named the Lich Ancestor was not a demon. It was an undead creature that hated life. When Lin Yuan created it, he said it to be proficient in all kinds of black magic and undead magic. Its personality was also a lunatic that was passionate about all kinds of strange research. It also had a little bit of hatred and disregard for life. Unknowingly, Lin Yuan had already created a lunatic that was even crazier than Cyrus. At the very least, Cyrus did a series of evil things to leave a big bad name in history. However, Adelaide was not like that. Every time it harvested lives, it was just an experiment to see if there was any possibility of improvement in one of its methods. Adelaide turned around and looked at a group of imps who were pushing carriages loaded with epidemic food. It smiled and said, "I call this experiment Adelaide's gift. What do you think, my revered king? I think your horse is gone, you lunatic. You don't respect me at all, and you insist on calling me your revered king." Diablo's eyelids twitched slightly. He turned his head and was silent for a while. Then, he said in a deep voice, "I think it's very good. Come on, Adelaide. Sooner or later, you will become the right-hand man of Master." After moving some Sky Demon corpses that were prepared in advance and covering the carriages with epidemic food, Adelaide stretched out its bony fingers and rubbed its chin. After a full 5 minutes, it nodded and said to the imps who were constantly changing the movement of the corpses, "Very good. It's like a scene where you were trying to save the food but were attacked by human troops. Put down the corpses and hide. When the Sky Demon comes, you will make some noise and quickly escape. Pretend that you can't handle the food in time, understand? Even the lowest level imps that could only be used as coolies were not existences that the invisible sky demon could fight against. Therefore, the ones who discovered this place could only be celestial demon warriors with physical bodies. When they transported this batch of food away, they would know what Adelaide's gift was. 7 days later. A sky demon soldier who was standing guard suddenly squatted down. A large amount of sweat was constantly secreting from the pores all over his body. His chest was violently moving up and down, and he was panting like a broken bellows. Ha ha ha, look, this is the fragile body of a human. This unlucky guy was seriously ill a few days ago. It was not easy to cure him, but now he's sick again. A patrolling sky demon laughed and squatted beside the sick sky demon soldier. He mocked, "Why are you guarding this body like it's a treasure? If I were you, I would have given up my body and gone to the front line to investigate the situation." Recently, the invisible sky demon at the front line would always mysteriously disappear. Therefore, more and more sky demon soldiers were unwilling to give up their bodies and go to the front line to investigate the situation at the northern frontier. They would rather guard their fragile bodies and stay in the military tents than do the kind of work that could disappear at any time. Because of this, the higher-ups had lost their temper countless times. Small team leaders like him were given a hard order to send some invisible sky demon soldiers to support the front line. However, no matter how much he persuaded, it was useless. If this continued, he would be stripped of all his privileges and be sent to the front line to participate in the direct battle. Therefore, he was in a very bad mood. Whenever he saw the sky demon soldiers who would rather guard their sick bodies than give up their bodies, he could not help but mock them. However, this time, he did not realize that danger was quietly approaching. The sick sky demon squatted on the ground. His breathing was gradually calming down, but his eyes that were once black and white were gradually turning blood red. Chapter 764. Roar. A beast-like roar came from the mouth of the sick sky demon. The mocking sky demon didn't even have time to react before he was thrown to the ground by a huge force. Immediately after, a black shadow quickly pounced on him, opened its mouth, and crazily bit at his flesh. Intense pain hit him like a tidal wave. No way, right? I was just saying a few words. Oh. Save me. Save me. Ah. Feeling a large amount of his life force drain away, the mocking sky demon reached out his hand to the patrol team that came with him and screamed for help. Wounds caused by sharp teeth appeared, and a large amount of blood flowed out, almost dyeing the ground red. At this time, the patrolling sky demon, who were shocked by the sudden change, went forward to pull away the crazy sky demon that kept biting their captain. However, they realized that this crazy person's strength was ridiculously strong. For sky demon warriors went forward but couldn't pull him away. Instead, they were bitten by him several times. He's crazy. Kill him. A sky demon that was bitten changed his expression and let out a roar. He unsheathed the long sword at his waist and instantly chopped off the crazy person's head. Even so, the crazy sky demon's body spasmed on the ground for a while, showing an extremely strong life force. At this time, a sharp-eyed sky demon realized that their captain had stood up at some point. Roar. It was similar to the roar of a wild beast. They had heard it from the mouth of the crazy heavenly demon not long ago, but at this moment, this roar came from their captain. Black blood flowed out of his torn and tattered body as he staggered toward his former subordinates. The sky demon captain's eyes gradually turned dark red, and a cold, hungry, beast-like look flashed in them. The 4 sky demon patrols were slightly startled and began to retreat. The sky demon was a race with a clear hierarchy. They could kill their own kind without any psychological burden because that fellow was just like them, the most ordinary sky demon. However, the captain of this patrol team had the more noble blood of the sky demon flowing in his body. What did it mean to kill a sky demon noble? They, or even their families, were going to be killed by the heavenly demon commander. Such a scene was not unique to this place. More and more sky demons suddenly died from the plague after the 7 days of incubation. Many sky demon did not even leave their bodies until they died. They were turned into a part of the undead along with their physical bodies. If Diablo knew that his subordinates had killed a large number of invisible sky demon, causing the sky demon to value their physical bodies so much that they were unwilling to leave their bodies, and causing the sky demon side to lose a lot of men due to Adelmon's gift, who knew what kind of expression he would have. Countless undead sky demon warriors chased after even more sky demon warriors and bit them. More and more sky demon warriors joined the ranks of the normal sky demon because of the end of the incubation period or because they were infected by the undead. The entire base seemed to have turned into a living hell. On a mountain peak not far away, Adelaide was holding a pair of binoculars produced by the Ministry of Works of the Northern Frontier. He quietly observed the sky demon base where the undead plague broke out. His skeletal face squeezed out a hideous smile again. Adelaide's gift had been successfully completed. The next step of the plan was to control the undead army to attack more sky demon. The plan's code name was Calamity. What a pity. Adelaide smacked his lips and murmured, "Those damned greedy demons will eat the invisible celestial demon as soon as they catch it. Even Diablo's order is useless. Otherwise, I would really want to find a few celestial demons' spiritual bodies to study." Unfortunately, it was only a spellcaster who needed to chant incantations and borrow the power of its great master in order to cast spells. If it encountered a heavenly demon warrior who excelled at explosive speed, it would be beaten to the point where it couldn't fight back at all. Not only that, those damned demons couldn't be trusted, and the humans in the Northern Territory were unable to enter this land filled with plague and undead. Moreover, Adelaide had already asked around. Although the Northern Frontier had caught many sky demon, almost all of them had sunk into the Nether Realm's black water. After all, they did not have any other means to destroy the sky demon except for the Nether Realm's black water. Naturally, they would not give the sky demon a chance to break through the seal and wreak havoc in the rear. It seemed that he had to go back and study how to improve the combat power of spellcasters in close combat. As for the sky demon that was said to be immortal and did not need a physical body to survive, it was no different from a joke to Adelaide and Diablo. The latter saw the spiritual bodies of the sky demon as food that he could not eat, while the former was proficient in black magic and undead magic. He was a master of manipulating the mind and soul. When it came to dealing with the invisible sky demon, they could say that they were experts. A group of things that were similar to ghosts had to provoke Lin Yuan, the Nether King recognized by the will of the world. This kind of behavior was usually called courting death. Whether it was black magic or undead magic, for Lin Yuan who had a preliminary control of the power of the Nether River, they were all things that he could use at his fingertips. After all, they were all models that could be directly copied from novels in his previous life. In essence, the only difference was the way to use the power. However, as a demon beast with a tyrannical physical body and a dragon scale armor that strengthens its defense, Lin Yuan prefers to fight with fists to the flesh, or hide directly behind the scenes and be a black hand level traitor. He is too lazy to use these disgusting and sinister powers. On the other side, in the Endless Sea, in the Willow Stone region. That's about it. Cyrus stood beside Lin Yuan and said with a fervent look, "The brave crab tribe is willing to announce that the Endless Sea will become a subsidiary force of our Willow Stone region. As for the other sea demon tribes around, although they have not expressed their opinions, their attitudes are quite ambiguous. It is said that the various small forces around the Willow Stone region have recently been wiped out by many forces. They probably want to do us a favor. That's normal." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and said indifferently, "The evil dragon camp has joined forces with me. In addition to the previous incident where I harmed Long Jiozi, in the eyes of most sea demon tribes, I have an irreconcilable hatred with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Who knows if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will take revenge on me? Not everyone has such decisiveness." "You mean to accept the brave crab tribe?" Cyrus was slightly stunned and looked at Lin Yuan with a puzzled face. It seemed that this was not what it had expected. Chapter 765. Lin Yuan nodded and said indifferently, "The strength of the gray-scaled flood dragon person is too weak. Although it is more than enough to defend the Willowstone Sea area with you, wanting to go one step further and obtain a bigger territory is tantamount to a fool's dream. Under such circumstances, if other sea demon clans are willing to join us, what reason do I have to reject them? Cyrus was speechless. After pondering for a while, Cyrus smiled bitterly and said, I understand what the Dragon King is thinking. However, the Endless Sea is still the territory of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Both you and the gray-scaled flood dragon person have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. If you're willing to lower your head, advancing further is just a word from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. On the other hand, no matter how much power you accumulate, you can't wantonly dominate the Endless Sea when you're hostile to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Indeed, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not in a good state now. Outside, there were old dominators surrounding them. Inside, there were various subordinates of the Dragon Palace who wanted to rebel. The evil Dragon Camp, which was originally a spy of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, had completely broken off their relationship with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Now, A.O. Siphon had even begun to command his loyal subordinates to clear out the spies that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had placed in the evil Dragon Camp to express his determination. Even if the Guild of Sea Demons, which was estranged from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and the outer ocean demon beasts that had given birth to their own civilization, they were still enemies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, but they had not completely fallen out with each other yet. However, thinking about it carefully, now that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas had become enemies with the entire Endless Sea, did they really care about the Endless Sea demon beasts? The answer was no. Of course, this was partly due to the pride and arrogance of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. However, on the other hand, would the Endless Sea demon beasts that seemed to have the upper hand have the guts to start a war with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas? Both sides could have countless small conflicts. However, when it came to a war that involved the destruction of the entire clan, both the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and the Endless Sea demon beasts tacitly stopped. Why was that? This was because the true enemies of the dragon race of the Four Seas had always been the old dominators who possessed spiritual influence. On the contrary, the beasts of the Endless Sea didn't dare to declare war on the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, because they knew what kind of enemy they were going to face. Their chance of winning this war was actually less than 30%. Thus, they could only use all kinds of small tricks to weaken the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, and continuously strive for more benefits for themselves. Cyrus clearly knew who was the real master of the Endless Sea. It had never been optimistic about Lin Yuan's ability to arm wrestle with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. That's why the brave crab race is so terrifying. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly and he said meaningfully, that clan leader famed for his bravery may not be best at his own bravery. While the other speculators were still watching, he could even half-reluctantly bet all of his wealth, using the survival of his entire race to bet, that I would win. Bet? Cyrus snorted and sneered, I think you've overestimated him. This time, the young clan leader of the brave crab race has come to the Willowstone Sea area, which has already made you feel disgusted. If the brave crab race doesn't pay a huge price, then you're destined to not accept them. Even if he has his own considerations, he can only be considered a gambler, not a wise man, right? Lin Yuan smiled and didn't respond. However, his evaluation of Cyrus in his heart had once again lowered. It seemed that the clan leader with the title of Iron Mane had always disguised himself well for so many years. Most of the speculators wanted to curry favor with Lin Yuan simply because they felt that the aberrant who could force the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas to abandon their territory in the Endless Sea and flee to the continent was not easy to deal with. Even if they gathered the power of the entire Endless Sea, they might not be able to win this war. They wanted to use this matter to curry favor with Lin Yuan to obtain an opportunity to develop in the Tianwu continent. Although Lin Yuan was currently restricted to the Endless Sea, all the leaders of the demonic beast clans knew that the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea were destined to not be accepted by the Tianwu continent. Only Lin Yuan, who had his own territory, was qualified to allow them to continue to breed on the continent. Therefore, when the time came, even if Lin Yuan didn't want to leave, he would be forced to leave by the powerful demonic beasts of the Endless Sea. At the same time, those who would be taken away would also be the outstanding juniors of the various clans. Under such circumstances, there were many demonic beasts who were willing to curry favor with Lin Yuan. However, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and Lin Yuan seemed to have formed a death grudge, so these speculators did not dare to go too far. They could only use various methods to curry favor with Lin Yuan and strive for a good impression. If there really came a day when their clans went to the continent, they would be able to obtain a good territory. Then, when the other sea demon clans were cowering, what could they do to maximize the benefits? That was to ignore the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and resolutely rely on Lin Yuan. It was easy to say, but it was extremely difficult to achieve this. Although the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas did not find trouble with Lin Yuan now, that was because the Great Old Ones were like a sharp blade hanging over their heads. It was hard to say whether they could protect their territory in the Endless Sea. Currying favor with Lin Yuan was also part of the plan. But what if this war was won? Would Lin Yuan, who had gathered a large number of sea demon clans under his command, threaten the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas' position in the Endless Sea? The answer was yes. At that time, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would definitely not be polite to Lin Yuan. They would definitely send troops to suppress him. They would either kill Lin Yuan, assimilate Lin Yuan, or drive him back to the Sky Martial continent. And the clans that gathered around Lin Yuan would have no other choice, only death. Those speculators who curried favor with Lin Yuan were the real gamblers. On the contrary, the clan leader of the Iron Mackerel clan was a wise man who had hidden himself well. Who knew if the young clan leader's provocation of Lin Yuan was incited or hinted by his father? If they did not want to be listed as a threat by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, they would have to pay the necessary price. For example, they would first provoke Lin Yuan's disgust, then sacrifice the young clan leader that they thought highly of. After paying a huge price, the entire Brave Crab clan would be, unwillingly, under Lin Yuan's command. In this way, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would not have an excuse to find trouble with them. Even if such a day really came, they would be able to abandon the darkness for the light at any time and become a vanguard of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas to suppress Lin Yuan. No clan leader with the character of a gambler would bet the survival of the entire clan on his own vision. Tai Mantis's actions could only show that he had enough foresight. He could vaguely see the great changes in the future of the Endless Sea and Lin Yuan's ambition, so he had made sufficient preparations. Chapter 766. Back to the topic, have you thought about the next step of the Willowstone Sea area? Lin Yuan took a deep breath and threw away all the distracting thoughts in his mind before asking. Cyrus was slightly taken aback. In a low voice, he said, "The situation in the Willow Rock Sea region is rather special because the nearby demonic beasts all want to curry favor with us. If we can't find an excuse to start a war, it's impossible to expand by force. We can only implement another path of development, such as trade." Cyrus paused and seemed to organize his words before continuing. The Willowstone Sea area has a special product called Willowstone. It has good density and some self-recovery ability. It's considered a hot product and is a material that should be prioritized when building strategic facilities. Although other sea areas also produce it, the total amount can't be compared to the Willowstone Sea area. This is also the reason why various forces coveted the territory of the Willowstone Sea area. My idea is not enough. Before Cyrus could finish speaking, Lin Yuan shook his head gently and said in a deep voice, "It's not that simple to do business. How many Willowstone mines are there, where they are distributed, how many people we have to start production, and how many Willowstones we can produce every month? Have you investigated all these things? If not, you have to start from the beginning. If you have, then just one special product won't be enough to support trade activities. I haven't investigated these things, but there are records stored over the years. If you want to investigate in detail, it will be very fast. Also, after the Brave Crab tribe joins us, we will have more people. Mining a large amount of willow stones won't be a problem. Besides, willow stones are selling very well in the Endless Sea. If we can organize a caravan, we won't have to worry about sales. Now that the relationship between various parties is complicated, even if the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas wants willow stones, they will have to take out materials to exchange. Willow stones were tributes in the past. If the Willow Stone Sea area didn't fall into our hands, we wouldn't even have the qualifications to do trade. Cyrus's face slightly changed, but he immediately felt relieved. The Blackwater Dragon King in front of him was a big boss who relied on trade to stabilize the northern frontier. He was undoubtedly more professional than a layman like him. It was reasonable to raise doubts. Yes, you're right. There's no need to worry about selling willow stones. It can bring in a lot of value in a short period of time. But you've neglected the most important point, which is that the investment and effort will slowly become disproportionate as time passes. In the past, willow stones were something that the lobster had offered as a tribute to the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Only the dragon race of the Four Seas had the right to use willow stones to build and maintain buildings. In the short term, if he organized caravans to sell willow stones, there would be people buying them from all over the world. Along the way, he would bring some goods from various sea regions to sell in other sea regions. Indeed, he would be able to earn a large amount of phase and various resources. But speaking of which, haven't you ever thought that all goods have market saturation? For example, if you sell willow stones to the nearby sea region, it's simple and convenient, but how many willow stones can the people in the nearby sea region consume? As time passes, the sea regions you have to go to will be farther and farther away. You'll need to invest a lot of time and energy. Moreover, not all sea demon tribes will be kind to us. Once you leave our sphere of influence, apart from merchants in charge of selling goods and odd job workers to transport goods, you'll also need to hire a large number of experts to accompany and protect you. Have you calculated the cost of these phase? The profit of willow stones will become smaller and smaller, and the harvest cycle will become longer and longer. However, the scale of the caravan will continue to expand, and the various expenses of hiring people will also increase. Gradually, our profits will become losses. I know you want to imitate the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, but the Endless Sea is different from the Hengduan mountain range. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce provides convenience for the other human dynasties and demon tribes. In addition, with my face and the exclusive right to operate, there's no need to worry about the goods being ruined. Therefore, it can continuously provide a large amount of income. Lin Yuan's voice was very soft, but when it fell into Cyrus's ears, it was like a heavy hammer pounding on its head. It had never heard of terms like market saturation and exclusive right to operate. However, if it continued to follow Lin Yuan's train of thought, it would indeed suffer more and more losses by selling willow stones. After all, willow stones were not hard currency like grains. Willow stones were definitely good stuff, but the price could not be outrageous. Otherwise, the other sea demon tribes would still be able to survive well after relying on ordinary materials to build their territories for so many years. Without a major threat, who would be willing to spend more money? Sooner or later, willow stones would be difficult to sell. As the sea regions they had to go to were farther and farther away, the scale and strength of the caravan would have to be gradually increased. This would further reduce the profits. Cyrus suddenly felt bitter and did not know what to say for a moment. Although there were teleportation portals that could connect the powerful sea regions directly, and there was no need to forcefully travel through them, the most important problem now was that the foundation of the Willow Stone Sea region had been destroyed in the previous battle. In order not to leave any evidence behind, after trapping the 9 sons of the dragon race, the other controlled parties had also been killing and destroying each other. The teleportation portal of the Willow Stone Sea region did not escape the disaster and was damaged in that great battle. The method of building teleportation portals had always been in the hands of the dragons of the Four Seas. Ever since the subordinates of the dragon palaces gradually became disobedient, the dragons of the Four Seas no longer built new teleportation portals, nor would they maintain or repair the ones they had built. It could be said that every time it was used, there would be less of it. To teleport between different sea regions, a large number of materials or spiritual items were required to use it. Therefore, the way of doing business through teleportation portals was also cut off. The cost and the profits were completely unequal. However, Lin Yuan changed the topic and said in a deep voice, "Business is indeed a way." Cyrus's face was even more dumbfounded. Good heavens, what the F***ck? I said business, and you told me it was not feasible. You just reprimanded me, and now you say business is a way. So you have no problem, and business is not a problem, but I have a problem? Cyrus was immediately enraged. In extreme anger, it squeezed out a smile. Dragon King, please advise me on what to do. Mine the Willowstone Sea region and build a city. The bigger, the better, and the more luxurious, the better. In short, I want everyone who comes to the Willowstone Sea region to be amazed. I want their first reaction to be that the Willowstone Sea region is rich and powerful. I'll take care of the rest. Lin Yuan's tail gently tapped the ground, and his multicolored eyes flickered. Chapter 767. Lin Yuan's idea was simple. The Endless Sea was not like the Hengduan mountain range. Doing business here, unless it was selling hard currency, would be a dead end. It was just a matter of time. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce was able to gain a foothold in the various dynasties simply because the Hengduan mountain range was located in the center of the continent. It could directly reach the territory of the 7 dynasties, and the speed was many times faster than taking a detour. The other human chambers of commerce could not possibly have Lin Yuan's influence. Once they entered the Hengduan mountain range, they would need to hire powerful cultivators to escort them. Moreover, in the Hengduan mountain range, where countless monsters ran rampant, even a Void Realm expert would not dare to say that he could cross with his body, not to mention those mercenaries who were willing to sell their lives for cultivation resources. Just based on this point alone, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce could directly suppress the other chambers of commerce. Perhaps once or twice, the chambers of commerce of the various dynasties could suppress the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. However, the most important problem was that they could casually suppress the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce in their own territory, but to do business and make money, they would have to trade with other dynasties. They would have to go through the northern frontier, or pass through the Shenwu dynasty's territory where the Sky Demon resided, or the Endless Sea where monsters ran rampant. If they dared to suppress the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, the northern frontier would dare to directly kill them and steal their goods. No matter how strong the Chamber of Commerce was, it was impossible for them to challenge a force that had the potential to become the 7th dynasty. Naturally, the final winner would be without a doubt. The various chambers of commerce could only hide under the shadow of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce and beg the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to buy their goods. Although the profits would be greatly reduced, if they offended the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, they would not even be able to sell their goods. Previously, a few chambers of commerce that tried to suppress the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce with their own relationships and connections were destroyed in this way. Therefore, there could only be one Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, and it could not be duplicated. However, in the Endless Sea, without enough power, wanting to trade fairly with the sea monster clans was no different than committing suicide. If one wanted to do business here, there was no way out by establishing a caravan. However, there was another path in front of Lin Yuan, and that was the shopping platform. It wasn't difficult to run a shopping platform. The difficult part was that the operator had to have a certain level of credibility. They had to be able to convince the various sea demon clans to send their goods here to be sold. Furthermore, they had to have the strength to ensure the safety of the traders. In the entire Endless Sea, only the Dragon Tribe of the 4 Seas and the Sea Demon Guild had the ability to create a shopping platform. But neither of them thought of this, or rather, they didn't need this method to accumulate wealth. However, Lin Yuan was different. Not only did he think of this method, but he also wanted the resources and wealth produced by the Endless Sea. Cyrus, find a way to contact the upper echelons of the Siren Guild and ask them to send their monsters here to set up a branch. Also, I have some matters to discuss with the Siren Guild in person. Lin Yuan thought for a moment, then stopped Cyrus, who had not had time to go out, and reminded him. The gray-scaled flood dragon person wasn't very powerful, but together with the power of the brave crab tribe, it was more than enough to ensure the safety of the Willow Rock Sea area. However, Lin Yuan knew that there was no end to earning money in this world. If he took all of it by himself, he would only attract the attention of others. He needed a strong and powerful partner. Otherwise, Why would he have split the profits from the northern frontier and given them to the forces led by the Heavenly Gate's guardians? In his previous life, the shopping platforms didn't need powerful forces because the country was prosperous and the people were at peace. However, in this world, the law of the jungle was played out incisively and vividly. Without enough strength, one didn't even have the qualifications to be a merchant. Just like in the ancient times of his previous life, there was a logistics industry called escort agency. When the Siren Guild joined in, it would replace this industry called escort agency, and provide a service of delivering goods to the monsters that couldn't take away their goods. Or, if someone was willing to pay a certain price, it wouldn't be a problem to hire members of the Siren Guild as guards. Once Lin Yuan's plan was successfully implemented, in the entire Endless Sea, there might not be any branch of the Siren Guild that could match the income of the Willow Rock Sea Area branch. With such benefits, even the Siren Guild wouldn't have a reason to watch it fall into the hands of others, right? After all, they were in this line of work to begin with. When the two of them formed a community of benefits, would it be difficult to rope in the Siren Guild? He wanted to build a trading city from scratch in the Willow Rock Sea Area. He wanted to let the various siren merchant groups that came and went from the south to the north become addicted to everything here. When they could enjoy the same convenience as the monsters in the Hengduan Mountains, the gray-scaled flood dragon person would be completely neutral in the Endless Sea. As for the other siren clans that tried to imitate him, it wasn't that Lin Yuan looked down on them. Even if they were given another 100 years to prepare, they wouldn't be able to build a trading city. In this world where the law of the jungle prevailed, the relationship between monsters wasn't pure. There were countless examples of killing and hunting each other. Without Lin Yuan's condition of being the retreat route for the monsters in the Endless Sea, even if they built a trading city, there wouldn't be many monsters that would be willing to trust them. As for Lin Yuan, he wanted to take advantage of the fact that the Siren clan still trusted him and tried to curry favor with him. He wanted to use this trading city to trap them and provide him with an endless stream of benefits. The other monsters didn't have this condition. At that time, the only one that had the ability to build a second trading city would be the Siren Guild. Because they would be able to continuously benefit from Lin Yuan, it wouldn't be good for them to fall out with him and do it alone. Moreover, even if they were willing to do it alone, it would be after the benefits of this trading city were enough to make them envious. Furthermore, he still had a trump card. Even if the Siren Guild was envious of the benefits of the trading city, they didn't use this trump card. I suspect that you are looking down on me. I can pull you out from the body of a dying human, then pass through the sea of bitterness and let you merge with an ordinary black snake in the sky martial world to become a new life form. I can also give you the ability to directly upgrade yourself. I can add the pure water dragon bloodline to your black snake physique to strengthen your strength. Do you know what kind of power is needed to do these things? You actually dare to doubt someone as great as me? You don't even have the ability to copy a low-level teleportation formation. Boring, Lin Yuan, really boring. When you asked such an ignorant question, my first reaction was that you were insulting me. Then I couldn't help but laugh at your ignorance and humility. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 768. Generally speaking, the situation in the Endless Sea was still stable, and everything seemed to be going in a good direction. Lin Yuan was not sure how long the balance between the Great Old Ones and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could be maintained. However, a battlefield where even true gods could fall was not something he could casually intervene in. Although he was sometimes more domineering, that was based on the condition that he had the strength to control the situation. Lin Yuan did not want to do a job that would send him to his death. There were about 27 days left before the rest time given by the system. Even if the monsters of the Endless Sea clashed with the Great Old Ones tomorrow, Lin Yuan would pretend that he did not see it. However, after 27 days, even if the Great Old Ones and the monsters of the Endless Sea did not start a war, Lin Yuan would have to intervene. The system was unbound and detached. To the current Lin Yuan, it was not a threat at all. As in existence with the system, he was still a mere mountain lord after such a long time. He had not even touched the clouds of this world. This kind of growth speed was considered an absolute humiliation among the system owners. However, it was clear that Lin Yuan, who had become a humiliation, was not completely without gains. Now, even without the help of the system, he could still sit firmly in the position of Blackwater Dragon King and continue to advance step by step. Without the system, he could instead obtain the favor of the will of this world. As long as he had enough strength, he could open up his own underworld kingdom and become one of the rulers of the Sky Martial world. Compared to the other seeds that were firmly bound by the system and would become trash once they lost the system, it was much better. At least now Lin Yuan could calmly express that he was not a puppet of the system. Both sides were just collaborators with unequal strength. It was impossible that there were only 10,000 worlds in the myriad worlds, and the system could not have chosen only 9,000 hosts. There should be countless more that died and were abandoned. In the future, there might be others that were chosen to join the battle against Hongjun. These hosts were special to the world they were in, and Lin Yuan was also special among these hosts. 27 days. Willow Rock Sea region is safe for now. Defeating the Sky Demon army shouldn't be a problem, right? Lin Yuan muttered to himself as a glint flashed across his eyes. In the next moment, a figure wrapped in a black robe walked out. He looked at Lin Yuan indifferently, then nodded lightly and put Lin Yuan's body into his beast pouch. The figure was the body of a puppet sent back by the ancestral dragon. Because of the self-detonation of the telepathic thought, the body of the puppet, which had lost control, was dragged away by the search team organized by the dragon palaces of the four seas. However, the body of the puppet was created by combining the skillful craftsmen of the northern frontier and the knowledge and ideas of Lin Yuan from his previous life. It was not something that the dragons of the four seas, whose technology was extremely backward, could easily analyze and replicate. His research was fruitless, and Lin Yuan's identity was a mystery. There was at least an ancient god that was stronger than the ancestral dragon behind him. The dragon palaces of the four seas also had to reconsider the importance of Lin Yuan. That's right. The dragon palaces of the four seas maintained a hostile relationship with Lin Yuan on the surface, suppressing those sea demon clans from joining Lin Yuan's forces. At the same time, they began to think of ways to please Lin Yuan without affecting the overall interests of the dragons of the four seas. Returning things to their original owners was a basic operation. When the body of the puppet was sent back, the dragons of the four seas even gave a lot of precious seabed minerals. However, Lin Yuan only had theories and couldn't improve the body of the puppet, so it had been put aside until now. Although it hadn't been improved, the body of the puppet could still be used after separating a telepathic thought. Although the body of the puppet didn't have the strength of Lin Yuan's body, it was more than enough to guard the Willow Rock Sea region. With a change of mind, Lin Yuan took the initiative to activate descend mode before the beast pouch fell into a complete sleep. At the same time, in the south of the Shenwu dynasty, in Julu City, a young man in his 20s slowly opened his eyes. His black and white eyes trembled slightly. After a while, they turned into a pair of different colored eyes like Lin Yuan. The only difference was that his eyes only changed color. It wasn't much different from the eyes of ordinary humans. It wasn't like Lin Yuan's, which belonged to the standard snake-type vertical pupils. It's been a long time since a human body. The young man opened his mouth, but what came out was Lin Yuan's voice. However, it was different from the way of using telepathic thought to vibrate the air to form a voice in the past. This time, the voice was completely the operation of the human body's vocal organ. It was like two pieces of crisp jade colliding together. It was very pleasing to the ear. As far as the eyes could see, it was also a normal colorful world. It was an extremely normal sense for humans, but for Lin Yuan, it was indeed a long-lost experience. Although he could see and speak in the past, snakes didn't have vision. They could only observe the target's actions through thermal imaging. Other than that, most of the time, they were like blind people. The snakes in this world were more advanced than the snakes in Lin Yuan's previous life. Although they had vision, it was similar to a dog's vision. Black and white were distinct. Although he didn't use his own eyes much, the perception brought by the eye of God was enough for him to notice any movement. He walked to the front of a dressing table and glanced at the figure reflected in the mirror. Lin Yuan's eyes slowly widened, and his pupils contracted violently. Why is it a girl? Lin Yuan's expression was a little strange. The young man in the mirror had a jade-like face. If he was wearing white clothes and holding a paper fan, he could be regarded as an elegant young master. Although he was indeed not an unparalleled young master, with this face, he could live a comfortable life even in this troubled world. It couldn't be easier for him to exchange for the favor and protection of those noble women with his appearance. But the problem was that this delicate face belonged to a girl. Even if it couldn't be seen from the outside, Lin Yuan could easily feel the restraint brought by the chest wrap. A girl disguised as a man and hid in deer-chasing city. She also prayed devoutly and longed for his arrival. Tisk, troublesome. Lin Yuan shook his head, and a touch of bitterness flashed through his heterochromatic eyes. It was just a physical body that his consciousness had descended upon. Moreover, it was an ordinary person without any cultivation. With his current ability, he could spend some incense power to mold this body into the so-called holy body or divine body, let alone change the gender of this body. However, as a practical person, Lin Yuan didn't want to waste incense power on this kind of thing. It wasn't like he didn't have his own body. No matter how good a human body was, could he keep using it? If his own body was killed, it would be too late for regrets. Chapter 769. His body was still a little uncomfortable. Lin Yuan hadn't controlled a human body for a long time. Even if he had a puppet body that looked like a human, it couldn't be compared to a real human. Simply put, the human body is the hardest thing in the world, a precise instrument. Lin Yuan only needed a thought to control the puppet's body to make the corresponding movements. Although controlling the human body is also a matter of a thought, one must consider the adaptability of the body itself. Excessive movements are easy to cause injuries such as sprains, dislocations, and other injuries. Without hands, the puppet body wouldn't feel pain. At most, it would have one less means of fighting. But without hands, a human would die on the spot due to excessive bleeding. However, this kind of discomfort wasn't purely because of Lin Yuan's body. Then, I will listen to your last wish in this world. Lin Yuan sat upright in front of the dressing table. His facial expression returned to its calm as water. Believers offering their bodies for the gods to descend didn't mean that the gods didn't have to pay a price. Otherwise, the deities in his previous life wouldn't have been banished to the mortal world. It wouldn't have been the cruelest punishment from the heavenly court. In order to perfectly control the body, one had to first fulfill the last wish of the person who was willing to offer their body. Usually, this kind of wish wasn't easy. If this wish couldn't be fulfilled, the body would produce a strong repulsive force and expel the deity who possessed the body. For people like Lin Yuan, it was fine. At most, his divine thoughts would be damaged to a certain extent. He would then return to his body to recuperate. However, those deities whose bodies were killed by the heavenly court and whose souls were banished to the mortal world didn't have such good luck. The best outcome was probably to become a wandering ghost that couldn't be reincarnated. Some even had their souls scattered. The omniscient and omnipotent existence in the West in his previous life was no exception. It was just that he was more cunning. He would cultivate fanatics who were willing to sacrifice everything for the gods. For these fanatics, being able to offer their bodies to the gods they believed in was a supreme honor. Why would they make such an excessive request? Unfortunately, this girl wasn't a fanatic of Lin Yuan. She offered her body for Lin Yuan to descend. It could be seen as a transaction. Even ants drag out their lives, let alone humans. If it wasn't for the impending despair, how could this girl be willing to become Lin Yuan's flesh raft? Kill him, kill them all. The person in the mirror was no longer in sync with Lin Yuan. Instead, he roared with a twisted and ferocious expression. As soon as the voice fell, the person in the mirror suddenly collapsed. When it reassembled, it had already changed into a calm face like Lin Yuan's, as if everything that had just happened was just a fantasy. At the same time, Lin Yuan felt a pain in his right hand. When he lifted his sleeve, he saw a hideous wound that was so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood was constantly flowing out. The healing speed of the wound was very slow. Lin Yuan only needed a glance to make a judgment. Such a wound would take at least 10 days to completely heal. And after the wound healed, if Lin Yuan still did not complete the girl's last wish, then he would face a powerful repulsive force. This was the rule of the descent of a god. He closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Memories flooded his mind like a tidal wave. Lin Yuan's beautiful facial features changed again, revealing a bitter smile. Lin Yuan touched his nose and murmured, "It turns out that I am just anyone." Yes, this girl was not even his believer. She just happened to know that he existed. Before Lin Yuan's descent, she had done all the rituals she knew and called out all the names of the gods she knew. Even Lin Yuan, the newly promoted god of the northern frontier, was not spared. It could be seen that the scope of the net was wide. Perhaps the humans in his previous life who called themselves the Sea King would be ashamed of their inferiority. The wound on her right hand came from the blood-stained dagger beside the dressing table. It was part of the ritual to summon a god, but this kind of ritual was usually fabricated by the lunatics of the Devil's sect. It was not worthy of trust at all. If she used this method to summon a god, she would have died from excessive blood loss before the gods who were busy every day could react. But at the end of her life, her prayer happened to be heard by Lin Yuan. At that time, she said, "Just anyone is fine. As long as my wish is fulfilled, I can give up everything." Lin Yuan was just anyone. It was obviously a ritual to summon the gods of the Tianwu world, but the only one who showed his divinity in the world, Lin Yuan, seemed to be unworthy of having a name. This is really infuriating. Lin Yuan shook his head, and his eyes flashed. His right hand sank, and the blood overflowing from the wound instantly solidified into black-red ice cubes, sealing the blood that was constantly overflowing. After all, it was just a mortal body. According to the rate of bleeding, he estimated that in less than 10 days, he would die from excessive blood loss. But, the system was actually so tyrannical? Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a faint light. This body did not have any cultivation. It was completely an ordinary human, but it could use the skills on the system panel. Except for a few skills that could only be used through the body of a demonic beast, Lin Yuan could use most of the skills directly. What was this? This was cheating, my friend. Why did the gods not descend to the world? Was it because they were not willing to show their divinity and spread their beliefs? Obviously not. That was because no matter how powerful the gods were, once they descended into the body of an ordinary believer, they would not be able to use any of their divine power. Therefore, when ordinary people felt despair, they would also feel despair. The path of using brute force to break through 10,000 laws would definitely not work. When using wisdom, it did not matter how great the gods were praised by their believers. It was still the same sentence. The omnipotent and omniscient gods did not exist. They only had powerful strength, immortal looks, and long lifespans. When they were deprived of their powerful strength, the strength they could use might not be as strong as a human's. Why could the chess player control the fate of the chess piece? Because they were outside the chessboard. But if they fell into the chessboard and became a chess piece with the thoughts of the chess player, what could they do? Wasn't their fate in the hands of the chess player behind them? However, Lin Yuan was able to display his skills with the body of a mortal. This kind of behavior is tantamount to cheating. So what if he only had the strength of a mountain lord? How big could the trouble caused by an ordinary person be? Could the existence of a mountain lord not be able to deal with it? But the most important question now was, who were they? Chapter 770. Lin Yuan had already absorbed all of the girl's memories. However, the memories did not clearly point out who she wanted to kill. After all, who didn't have a few enemies when they were traveling in the world? However, the problem was that the girl's enemies were all over the world. The furthest were even from other dynasties. If he wanted to kill all of them, Lin Yuan would have to use the power of the northern frontier. However, that was obviously not realistic. Not to mention whether he could safely pass through the Sky Demon's territory, he might not even be safe in the south. After absorbing the girl's memories, Lin Yuan finally understood why the Sky Demon army had suddenly stationed troops at the Wei River to attack the northern frontier. It was not because the south had fallen. It was because there was no need for the Sky Demon to worry about the south. Ever since the Baixing navy had been scattered by Lin Yuan, the Sky Demon had carried out a decapitation plan. The upper echelons of the southern interest groups led by Lei Qiuming had either died or escaped. Now, their whereabouts were unknown. Naturally, the south had fallen into the hands of the demon sect. What were the demon sect? They were madmen who worshipped Hong Jun. Strictly speaking, the demon sect had contributed greatly to the Sky Demon's repeated invasions of the Tianwu world. Since their allies had begun to invade the south, it was naturally inappropriate for the heavenly demons to intervene. Therefore, they directly integrated their forces and began to eye the north covetously. Previously, Lin Yuan had set up a plan to fight against the Shenwu dynasty, but it had turned out to be a failure at this moment. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had led the wolf into the house. However, Lin Yuan was not an omniscient and omnipotent existence. Back then, he only had Lei Qiusheng in his eyes. In order to resist the Shenwu dynasty, he naturally had to resort to unscrupulous means. It did not matter if he had led the wolf into the house. In any case, the disaster would not come to him in a short period of time. However, who would have thought that Lei Qiusheng actually had a deal with the Sky Demon? Apart from Lei Qiusheng, most of the nobles, ministers, and dignitaries were also under the control of Sky Demon. This wave is lifting a rock and dropping it on my own feet, system? Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a strange color, and he asked tentatively. Spit it out. The system did not seem to be in a good mood. It rebuked Lin Yuan fiercely, as if it was suddenly woken up from its sleep. Between the lines, there was a hint of resentment and displeasure. Give me a martial art. I want it to be powerful and domineering. It's best if it can attract attention. Lin Yuan said with a grin. The strength of a mountain lord could be unleashed, but that was not the normal state. When releasing skills, one could be said to be invincible. However, most of the skills required a strong physique to be used. Furthermore, skills like the Water Monarch and Formless Ice had a long cooldown that would allow the enemy to kill Lin Yuan. Therefore, the improvement of one's strength had to be on the right track. Furthermore, he was certain that this girl's enemy was definitely not far from her. Perhaps, the girl had already unknowingly discovered him, which led to her summoning the gods. If he could not solve the problem, then he would solve the person who raised the problem. No, if he could not find the hidden enemy, then he would make the hidden enemy jump out and find him. Request accepted, calculating, cross-world mission issuing. Beep. Mission completed. Host's request has been delivered to your doorstep. Please pay incense power to redeem it. Remember to leave a good review, dear. Lin Yuan? What the heck? What the heck is this cross-world mission issuing? What the heck is this that requires me to spend incense power? I spent more than 3,000 points of incense power. Why don't I just get a grayscaled flood dragon person to be my bodyguard? The investment is small and the returns are high. It can even provide me with an endless supply of incense power. Are you a dog? Here's a friendly reminder, I couldn't sense your thoughts previously because that body of yours had been tampered with by the Beast Master. He might have used some kind of karma power or some kind of natural spiritual treasure. I won't be able to decipher it in a short period of time. However, if you use this body to communicate with me, regardless of whether you're willing or not, I can hear your thoughts. Are you King scolding me? Look straight at me, bastard. Do you really think you can use skills out of thin air? I'll say the same thing again. Even if you're dreaming, you should know your limits. Although the cost of using skills won't fall on this body of yours, it will be directly deducted from incense power. If you're unwilling, then don't use skills. Are you a member of the Peach Blossoms Network? Also, incense power has many uses. It's considered a hard currency in all the worlds. If you want living beings from other worlds to work for you, you'll have to pay incense power. When you make cross-world transactions with other hosts, you'll also have to pay incense power. Do you understand? If you don't use this thing, how are you going to become stronger? Why are you acting like a miser? As for the gray-scaled flood dragon person, don't forget that this isn't the northern frontier. Even if you've fallen into the hands of the demon sect, you'll have to use any tricks that you can't see the light of day. You can try and see how many righteous cultivators will appear to suppress you if a demon beast appears in a human city. I've deducted the incense power for you. That's all. Talk to you later. I still have things to do. A series of words appeared, catching Lin Yuan off guard. A moment later, a slightly yellowed ancient book appeared in front of Lin Yuan, as well as a silver-white long saber. Name, Guanshanshua type, weapon, saber, rating, B characteristic, 1 drifting snow effect. This saber was refined from the cold iron of the snow mountain, supplemented with layers of cold materials, and forged with extremely cold fire. When swung, it can produce a large amount of ice-type spiritual energy, like drifting snowflakes. It's extremely beautiful, but also extremely dangerous. It can slowly lower the surrounding temperature, causing the blood of the people around it to gradually solidify and freeze. Characteristic, 2 cold front effect. The saber contains a large amount of ice-type spiritual energy. It can freeze everything that comes into contact with the saber. With every swing of the saber, the cold energy in the opponent's body will accumulate until it's completely frozen by the cold energy. Name, Thousand Mountain Saber Technique Type, Martial Arts Secret Manual Rating, 3rd Grade Martial Arts Effect. To cultivate this saber technique, one's aptitude is not important. The most important thing is perseverance. Only after swinging the saber 30,000 times a day can one be initiated. When one swings the saber light will fill the sky, as if 1,000 mountains are pressing down on it. It's not something that can be resisted by humans. Lin Yuan's strange eyes flashed. A curse hung on the edge of his mouth, but he didn't spit it out for a long time. 3rd grade martial arts were much stronger than golden body technique, which was not initiated. But the problem was, how should one practice this saber technique? It was possible to rely on attribute points to accumulate proficiency, but golden body technique was a passive skill that could be actively activated. It was only a defensive skill, so it didn't matter whether one was proficient or not. It couldn't be based on the speed of activating the skill, right? So golden body technique only needed to progress in its cultivation. However, the saber technique had to be used against the enemy. If one couldn't use it proficiently, it would be a joke even if it was mastered in a second. Chapter 771. Lin Yuan glanced at the secret manual, and after roughly memorizing the cultivation route and the sword technique routine, he closed the secret manual and directly froze it into ice dregs and scattered them on the ground. He picked up Guan Shanshua and walked out of the room. All in all, the golden body technique was a superior martial art in Lin Yuan's eyes. It was similar to the indestructible Vajra body technique in a TV series. Even a beginner would have the strength of a so-called innate expert. However, for the system that set up the universe, it was indeed a mediocre martial art. As for the Thousand Mountain Saber technique, which was rated as a third-rate martial art by the system, it was a technique on the Tianwu continent that would be regarded as the ultimate treasure of a first-rate sect. The saber technique was very simple. Drawing the saber, striking, and withdrawing the saber. These 3 simple movements were like the basic saber techniques. However, the most terrifying part of the Thousand Mountain Saber technique was not the moment the saber was struck, but the moment the saber was drawn. One's qi and blood lingered on the saber. The stronger the qi and blood, the heavier the saber. If one had the physique of Lin Yuan's original body, this saber strike would have the power of 1,000 mountains. Of course, without the support of a strong physique, the Thousand Mountain Saber technique provided another way of thinking, the saber nurturing technique. Cultivators could continuously draw qi and blood from their bodies and infuse it into their saber. After a long time, the saber could even have the terrifying power to shatter the world. Although it was only one strike with blood, the power was boundless. Together with Guan Shanshue's strength, Lin Yuan could directly make a strike comparable to a void realm cultivators in 7 days. Phew! After circulating the saber nurturing technique, Lin Yuan's body shook twice, and his face turned pale. After 10 minutes, he steadied himself, and a faint sneer appeared on his delicate face. This strike, which had almost drained half of his chi and blood, could kill an extraordinary level 7. He was barely able to protect himself when he went out. Although this woman didn't know how much trouble she had caused, her mind wasn't completely empty. The inn she was staying in was called Red Dust. 1 day's expenses were comparable to 3 days' worth of cultivation resources for an airborne realm cultivator. If it wasn't for the fact that they could use common silver to settle the bill, this woman probably wouldn't even be able to afford to stay in the Red Dust Tavern. Generally speaking, normal people would not choose to live here. Even if the rooms were luxuriously decorated and the service was excellent, the cost of living here for a day was comparable to half a month's income of a small family. However, there was definitely a reason why it was expensive. The Red Dust Inn belonged to an extreme Dao organization called the Red Dust Association. It wasn't a large organization, but it was said that its leader, the Red Dust Daoist, was already a half-step Kongming cultivator. Although he couldn't compare to those first-rate sects, he definitely couldn't be underestimated. The Red Dust Tavern could be found in almost every city in the south. Regardless of whether it was the shopkeeper or the servant, they were all people who could get along well with both the good and the bad. They had decent cultivation and were able to control the situation. After all, although the Red Dust Tavern didn't have many customers, those who were willing to stay were all people who didn't lack money. Every day, they would throw real money into the Red Dust Tavern. Some people who didn't have enough money would even sell all kinds of treasures to pay for it. It was the main source of funds for the Red Dust Society. Thus, nothing could happen to the Red Dust Tavern. If something did happen, the other party would have to pay the price in blood. Otherwise, how would they survive in the underworld if their reputation was ruined? Apart from first-rate sects and imperial court officials, very few people dared to not give the Red Dust Association face. Thus, if one stayed in the Red Dust Tavern, they wouldn't have to worry about their enemies coming to seek revenge. Otherwise, they would be slapping the Red Dust Association's face and would definitely be hunted down by the entire Red Dust Association. This woman has stayed here for half a month without any enemies. This means that her enemies aren't as strong as the Red Dust Association. At the very least, they aren't strong enough to ignore the Red Dust Association. In other words, they can only be considered a second-rate power at most. This woman's family background isn't bad either. For several generations, her family's status is comparable to that of a feudal official. TSK, how troublesome. She only knows that her family's fortunes have fallen, but she doesn't know what kind of calamity has befallen her family. After walking out of the tavern, Lin Yuan let out a long breath. A hint of helplessness flashed across his eyes. If he had a choice, he would still prefer to possess one of the believers in the northern frontier. However, the south was also good. He could stab the sky demon in the back a few times. If he did it well, he could even form a connection with the gray-scaled flood dragon person in the Endless Sea. It would be beneficial for the south and the Endless Sea's layout. Lin Yuan shook his head slightly. A cold light suddenly flashed across his multicolored eyes. From the moment he stepped out until now, he had already walked half a street. The Eye of God was also operating at full power. There were at least 7 people following behind him on this street. There were also people watching the tea houses and taverns on both sides of the street. It seemed like this woman's enemies had indeed come to her door. They didn't make a move immediately because they were afraid of the Red Dust Association. However, they sent out a lot of people to block her in the Red Dust Tavern. They were probably waiting for her to spend all her wealth and be chased out of the Red Dust Tavern before making a move. In fact, this woman really didn't have any money. At most, she would be chased out of the Red Dust Tavern in 3 days. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so desperate to use all kinds of rituals in an attempt to summon a god. All right. Lin Yuan muttered. He turned sideways and entered a dark alley. Immediately, the eyes of the 7 cultivators who had been following behind suddenly lit up. They put down their disguises and followed Lin Yuan into the alley. If they made a move in the Red Dust Tavern, they would be targeted by the Red Dust Association. If they made a move on the streets, they would also be targeted by the city guards. But wasn't this kind of dark and deserted alleyway the most suitable for dirty deeds like murder? In fact, when this kind of alley was first built, it was for this purpose. It existed in almost every city. There were many criminals. In Lin Yuan's previous world, it was still okay. However, in the Sky Martial continent, where the strong preyed on the weak, it was normal to want to reap without sowing just a bit of strength. There was no fear of killing these people even if they couldn't catch them all. They were like chives that could be harvested. Therefore, the local government could only turn a blind eye and build such dark alleys to provide a place for those dirty deeds in the city. This was to prevent things from getting out of hand. As long as the crime wasn't discovered, then there wouldn't be any crime. Little girl, you're asking for death. The first cultivator to enter the dark alley sneered. His hands moved, and his joints kept cracking. He was at the middle stage of the mortal evolution state. Wasn't it easy for him to deal with an ordinary woman? I ask, you answer. Otherwise, die. Unexpectedly, the woman who was targeted by the higher-ups didn't have the slightest trace of panic on her face. Instead, she stood there calmly, as if waiting for them to come to her door. Chapter 772. What the F***ck are you talking about? The cultivator raised his eyebrows and looked up and down at Lin Yuan. After confirming that he didn't have any cultivation, a sinister smile gradually appeared on his face, and he said in a cold voice, "Oh, I know, you don't have the money to let the Red Dust Society continue to protect you, so you plan to pretend to be a big wolf to scare us? Heh. Mortals will always be mortals. You'll never know." The cultivator's voice stopped abruptly. Because at this moment, he had already turned into an ice sculpture with two halves. Noisy. Lin Yuan frowned and didn't put away his sword. He looked at the second cultivator and said coldly, "I've never been a patient person. This is your chance. Think carefully before you speak." You, the second cultivator's breathing stopped slightly. His power was about the same as the first cultivator. The result would be the same if the sword landed on him. However, this woman clearly didn't have any chi of a cultivator. How could she unleash such a terrifying attack? As his thoughts flashed, the second cultivator suddenly felt like he understood. When his gaze landed on Guan Shanxue, his eyes were filled with greed. He said in a deep voice, "Talisman, it is definitely a talisman. I didn't expect you to have such fortune to find a magic treasure that can be used by ordinary people." Speaking of this, he also showed a hideous grin on his face. "Little girl, do you know that you're facing powerful and noble cultivators? The things we know are much more than what you know. Using a magic treasure of this level once is already an overdraft. You can't use it a second time in a short time." The 5 cultivators behind the second cultivator also reacted instantly. They suppressed the shock and panic in their eyes. Intense greed began to appear in their eyes. Even an ordinary person could instantly kill a middle-stage mortal evolution state. If a treasure of this level fell into their hands, even an airborne realm cultivator would have to avoid it for the time being. Lin Yuan's face was calm. He didn't say anything as though what the other party said had nothing to do with him. "Grandpa will give you a chance. Give me the saber in your hand and I will let you die a quick death. At least I won't let you be humiliated before dying." Ha 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 ha. Ha. The second cultivator was laughing when he suddenly felt a chill on his neck. His vision suddenly dimmed. Lin Yuan, on the other hand, had already walked past him and faced the third cultivator. "Now, do you want to take a gamble and see if I can make the third slash?" "I dead?" The second cultivator's face darkened. He wanted to turn around and attack Lin Yuan, but his body did not move. It was as if it was no longer his body. Following that, he felt as if the world was spinning. The last thing he saw was a headless corpse. The corpse stood where it was, and not a single drop of blood flowed out of the wound. If one looked closely, they would see that the blood that flowed out of the cut had all turned into dark red ice. The corpse stood there because it had been frozen into a lump. Gulp. The third cultivator swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The greed in his eyes instantly disappeared, leaving behind only endless panic and fear. In the next moment, the cultivator at the back of the group had just turned around when he fell to the ground with a plop. His body quickly shriveled up, and in an instant, he had become a dried corpse. Whoever runs will die. Lin Yuan's face was still expressionless. In reality, he knew very well that he didn't have the ability to kill the fourth person. He had already used the Blade Nurturing Strike, Formless Ice, and Water Monarch. They were now entering the cooldown stage. As for skills like Sea Suppressing Tail and Void Embrace, he had to consider whether or not his body could withstand them. His main body was naturally fine, but this was an ordinary person's body. He would probably explode and die when he used these skills. As for the blood boiling technique, to Lin Yuan's main body, a buff skill without any side effects was indeed quite good. However, this body was only that of an ordinary person. Could an ordinary person's body be compared to these cultivators in front of him if their physique was increased by 3 times? Wasn't that just wishful thinking? I'm King Ning's right-hand man. I'm a disciple of the Flying Star sect. I'm Su Situ's right-hand man. I'm just a mercenary on a bounty mission. The 4 cultivators who were still alive thought quickly and responded to Lin Yuan's question. After all, the 7 of them had similar cultivation. The mission target could kill 3 of them in an instant. Who could guarantee that he didn't have the ability to kill a 4th person? They didn't even want to take a gamble. In other words, they were on this mission for the reward, but they hadn't reached the point where they would risk their lives to complete it. None of them wanted to continue angering Lin Yuan and see if they would become the next victim. King Ning? Flying Star Sect? Su Situ? Mercenary Guild? Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly. How many enemies did this woman make? No. This woman must have some secrets that even he didn't know about. Otherwise, the seniors of several feudal officials wouldn't have fallen for no reason. She also wouldn't have been chased to the point of trembling in fear. All her servants and attendants died in battle, and she had to spend a lot of money in exchange for the protection of the Red Dust Gang. Why are you guys trying to kill me? Lin Yuan tilted his head and asked the second question in a cold tone. I'm just following orders. As for the details, before King Ning's right-hand man could finish his sentence, his head had already flown out and hit the wall of the alley. Then you're worthless. Lin Yuan said expressionlessly, as if he was talking to the corpse. However, the other 3 people who were still alive knew that he was actually talking to them. No matter what they were thinking, it was best not to try to bluff their way out of this. Lying and being worthless would only lead to a dead end. They didn't believe that this woman, who seemed to be prepared, really didn't know anything. Su Situ's right-hand man and the mercenary quietly took a step back, not daring to face Lin Yuan. Such a small action naturally couldn't escape the eye of the god. Ha! Lin Yuan's lips curled up slightly. His eyes fell on the Flying Star sect disciple's face and asked, "It seems that you know very well why you're chasing me?" "No, we're not chasing you. We're chasing you." The Flying Star sect disciple's face didn't change, but his legs kept trembling. He said in a trembling voice, You have a body of extreme een. If you can be used as a double cultivation furnace, you can help our senior brother break through the realm. Chapter 773. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. In the novels in his previous life, he had seen stories of sect disciples capturing cultivation vessels. But the problem was that even if he was in a novel, he would definitely be the main character, okay? How could such a story happen to him when he was targeted and wanted to be captured as a cultivation vessel? That was very strange. The disciple of the Flying Star sect seemed to have regained his confidence when the name of his eldest brother was brought up. While he was still trembling, his tone became a lot harsher as he coldly said, "Miss Guan, our eldest brother is 41 years old, and he is already at the peak of the airborne realm. If you work with him, he will definitely make it to the celestial star realm within 2 years. Even Lord Ning and Su Situ have to give face to our eldest brother. There is no way the Guan clan, which has already declined, can escape from our eldest brother's grasp. At this point, the Flying Star sect's disciple smiled and said disdainfully, I don't know what kind of opportunity you have, but in the face of true power, it doesn't matter how many treasures you have. If you're willing to cooperate and give yourself and your opportunity to eldest senior brother, it'll only take a single word from eldest senior brother to make the Guan clan rise again. He was sure that he was the big senior brother of the Flying Star sect. As for them, they should be the Flying Star sect disciples, King Ning, and Su Sidu's accomplices. Since he knew what he wanted to know, the rest was much easier. You're right. In the face of absolute power, treasures are useless no matter how many treasures you have. Unfortunately, you don't know anything about true power. Lin Yuan slowly looked up, and a cold light flashed in his multicolored eyes. The next moment, his chi changed. Name, Guan Zhaoshan. Status, God descends. Lin Yuan. State, 7/10 speed, 11 attack, 13 defense, 11 assignable attribute points, 0 talent. First, the 9-in Phoenix body is a special constitution. Cultivation efficiency is increased by 100%, and the affinity for in attribute cultivation methods is maxed out. If one cultivates in attribute or frost attribute cultivation methods, their cultivation speed will be increased by another 100%. However, when cultivating in attribute or frost attribute cultivation methods, their cultivation speed will be reduced by 70%. Martial Arts, 1. Thousand Mountain Sword Technique. Skills, 1. Sword Nurturing Technique. Congratulations, host, for killing a level 5 Mortal Evolution State Cultivator. Gained 10 attribute points. Congratulations, host, for killing a level 6 Mortal Evolution State Cultivator. Gained 12 attribute points. Congratulations, host, for killing a level 5 Mortal Evolution State Cultivator. Gained 10 attribute points. After confirming the target he wanted to kill, Lin Yuan gained the initial approval of this body and became more and more compatible with it. He even opened the attribute panel. Although it was an independent system panel, with the system, it was equivalent to soaring. Me, cheating, super awesome. Looking at the prompts that were refreshed one after another by the system, Lin Yuan almost turned into a lemon spirit. Back then, he had risked his life to kill demonic beasts. How many attribute points did he get? As for the human model, a level 5 Mortal Evolution State could provide 10 attribute points. I'm jealous. Is this what a genius looks like? Mortal Evolution State, level 7? The confidence that the Flying Star sect's disciple had vanished in an instant as he stuttered. In an instant, she went from an ordinary person to a level 7 Mortal Evolution State. What terrifying aptitude was this? Even if he was placed in those super first-rate sects, he could be groomed as a young sect leader. Suddenly, he wasn't so confident in the Flying Star sect anymore. After all, the Flying Star sect was only a second-rate sect. Even a second-rate Lulin organization like the Red Dust Society didn't dare to mess with them, much less those stronger forces. If Guan Zhaoshan escaped Zhulu City and gained the favor of a certain top sect, the entire Flying Star sect would be in trouble soon. No, he had to run. He had to report this to the sect and get rid of Guan Zhaoshan as soon as possible. Otherwise, everyone would die, and the entire Flying Star sect would die because of his big brother's greed. How dare you, still want to run? I want you to help me cultivate. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. The Guan Shanshua in his hand whizzed out and pierced through the heart of the Feishing sect disciple. Congratulations, host, for killing a level 5 Mortal Evolution State Cultivator. Gained 3 attribute points. Lin Yuan? What the F***CK? Lin Yuan was even more jealous. Even when his main body killed a spirit beast that was 1 level higher than him, he would only gain 3 to 5 attribute points. It was only when his cultivation level increased and he encountered stronger enemies that he gained more attribute points. But look at this human body. Was this something that a human could do? Killing a cultivator 2 levels lower than him and still gaining 3 attribute points. What would happen if he killed an enemy that was 1 level higher than him? If he had such aptitude, how could he still be stuck at level 8 Mountain Lord state? He would have taken off long ago. The Su Situ family's consecrator took 2 steps back and said in a trembling voice, "Young Lady Guan, there's no enmity between us. It's just that the Flying Star sect is too powerful. Even my master has to be wary of them. If we don't do anything, the Guan family's mistake will be a lesson to us. Please, give me a chance. I promise I won't be your enemy again." He could tell that Guan Zhaoshan wasn't planning to let them go at all. However, the so-called King Ning was just a son of Lei Chuming. The official position of Su Situ was also given by Lei Chuming himself. This guy had established himself as an emperor in the south. In essence, he was still the former King Qingpeng. The officials and generals under him naturally wouldn't have the ability to go against a sect, even if it was just a second-rate sect. On the other hand, Guan Zhaoshan came from the Guan family, which was an old aristocratic family of the Shenwu dynasty. Hence, she had always listened to Lei Chuming. If Lei Chuming didn't stab her in the back, a mere Flying Star sect wouldn't be able to threaten the Guan family. That's good too. The better the aptitude of this body, the faster I can improve. 27 days is enough. Lin Yuan murmured to himself as he killed all the mercenaries and servants of the Su Situ family. After obtaining 7 attribute points, he began to distribute them. His chi also rose to level 8 of the mortal evolution state. He was only 1 step away from level 9. He took out Guan Shanxue from the body of the Flying Star sect's disciple. After making sure that there wasn't any blood on the blade, he hung Guan Shanxue on his back and walked out of this dark alley. End? That was something only criminals would do. Now that Lin Yuan had opened the system interface, he was still worried that he didn't kill enough people to overthrow the demon sect and stab the sky demon in the back. If the local government and the city guards wanted to find trouble with him, they could come. Killing one was a crime, killing 10,000 was a hero. After experiencing the era of the spirit beast, Lin Yuan couldn't resonate with the life and death of humans anymore. After all, they were 2 completely different life forms. The difference between a mortal and a god was the difference between a mortal and an ant. When a mortal walked, would they care about how many ants they stepped on? Chapter 774. Moments later, Lin Yuan returned to the Red Dust Inn. He didn't know where the Flying Star sect was. He also didn't know where Lei Chuming and the officials he appointed were. However, today's act of luring the snake out of its hole was pretty good. Although he hid his chi, 7 mortal evolution state cultivators with ill intentions followed him in, but he was the one who came out in the end. Those people in charge of watching him would definitely go in and investigate. Then, they would come to the same conclusion as the first cultivator. Lin Yuan had a great treasure on him. Although the profession of a refiner existed in the Tianwu continent, and when Lin Yuan first entered this world, he came into contact with many cultivators who had weapons with special powers. However, that was obviously just an example. In other words, only cultivators who often wandered on the line between life and death would not hesitate to buy or make special weapons at a high price. Although the southern part of the Shenwu dynasty was also close to the endless sea where spirit beasts ran rampant, it was basically safe as long as one didn't go out to sea. This was because not all sea demons had the ability to go on land. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to unleash their full power. If such sea demons were caught, they would probably be cooked into delicious dishes that night. However, the Hengduan mountain range was different. Spirit items were abundant, but spirit beasts ran rampant. In the mountains and forests, spirit beasts had a lot more advantages than human cultivators. In the southern part of the sea, it wasn't difficult to deal with the sea demons that came ashore even without magic artifacts. However, at the northern frontier's Hengduan mountain range, who would dare to enter the Hengduan mountain range without a life-saving trump card? Forgery masters were very common in the north. There were quite a number of forgery masters in the northern frontier Ministry of Works, but in the south, forgery masters might not be able to do well. Without a few specialties, the southern forgery masters might not be able to do as well as ordinary blacksmiths. Although magic artifacts weren't popular in the south, no one could deny their value. If one had the chance to get it, it would probably cause a bloodbath in the southern cultivation realm. Ordinary magic artifacts were like this, let alone this one that Lin Yuan made them think existed. If an ordinary person could use it and crush 7 middle-stage mortal evolution state cultivators, wouldn't someone with a higher cultivation level be able to easily fight someone with a higher cultivation level? Of course, the strength of those stalkers was about the same as the 7 cultivators who had died in the alley. As long as they were not blinded by greed, they would not choose to kill Lin Yuan for the sake of seizing the treasure. After all, they had learned from their mistakes. The reason why Lin Yuan had returned to the Red Dust Inn was to make them completely give up on this idea. Although the treasures were good, one needed to be alive to enjoy them, right? After offending the Red Dust Tavern and hiding the matter of the treasure from the higher-ups, who could protect them? Therefore, their only choice was to report Lin Yuan's treasures to their superiors. By then, there would be no need to worry about no powerful figures appearing in Julu City. Even the first senior brother of the Flying Star sect might come personally. After all, there was no way he would give up a treasure and a furnace that could help him break through to the next realm. If they killed him, the mission would be considered half completed. Moreover, the information obtained from these higher-ups would always be more than the information obtained from the mouths of the people at the bottom. To put it bluntly, these people probably only knew who the target of the mission was. As for the specifics, the dead disciples of the Flying Star sect would probably be the limit of what they could get. They didn't have the right to know the deeper details. The moment he stepped into the Red Dust Inn, Lin Yuan immediately stepped forward. He frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Shopkeeper, why did you suddenly stop me?" The plump shopkeeper behind the counter, who always had a smile on his face like a Maitreya Buddha, chuckled as he stood up from his chair. He said, "Miss Guan, although the Red Dust Inn doesn't ask about the private matters of its customers, the trouble you're in is too great. I'm afraid the Red Dust Inn won't be able to protect you." "What do you mean?" Lin Yuan was slightly startled and said with a chuckle. This shopkeeper's eyes were so sharp. When Guan Zhaoshan stayed at the Red Dust Inn, she was disguised as a man. Her identity documents were all forged by the Guan family before they were destroyed. Even if they were taken to the government, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Yet, this shopkeeper called her a miss. Just based on his eyesight, he probably wasn't someone easy to deal with. In addition, the shopkeeper's action to stop him was a test between cultivators. If he took another step forward, his right leg might have been directly crushed by the true energy the shopkeeper had set up beforehand. Lin Yuan's main body wouldn't be afraid, but this body was only at level 8 of the mortal evolution state. Even if he was a prodigy, he wouldn't be able to fight against someone at the peak stage of the airborne state. In a direct confrontation, Lin Yuan could instantly kill him. However, Lin Yuan could not foolishly take this kind of trick head-on like how he controlled the demonic beast. Based on the strength of both sides, he did not even have the qualifications to exchange injuries, because the shopkeeper could also instantly kill his physical body. "Miss Guan, you're asking the obvious, aren't you?" The shopkeeper's eyes turned cold, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He said coldly, "When you went out, you were still an ordinary person who hadn't even touched the threshold of cultivation. Now, you're at the late stage of the mortal evolution state. Even if you hide your chi, you can't escape my eyes. I haven't asked who you are yet." As soon as he finished speaking, the servants in the inn drew their weapons one after another. The Red Dust Inn had always been like this. When there were guests, they were the servants who welcomed and sent them off. However, if someone came to cause trouble, they would turn into bandits who killed without blinking an eye. Lin Yuan's face sunk. The Red Dust Gang seemed to be stronger than he thought. His chi concealment technique was a means of a Mountain Lord level monster. A mere airborne realm cultivator, even at the peak of the airborne realm, shouldn't be able to see through it. Either the shopkeeper had cultivated some secret technique, or he had a secret treasure that could observe other people's cultivation. Regardless of which it was, the Red Dust Gang's strength was probably much more powerful than it appeared on the surface. Even those first-rate sects and clans in the northern frontier might not have such a foundation. How could a mere quasi-first-rate force have such a secret technique or treasure? I've looked into it. Guan Zhaoshan has been frequently buying materials for sacrificial rituals. If I'm not mistaken, you're probably a wasteland-ean god she summoned, who honored her last wish and took her body. This sort of thing is a taboo in the Red Dust Tavern, but I never thought that she would actually succeed. It's my dereliction of duty for not chasing her away in advance. That's why when you left this morning, although your eyes changed, I resisted the urge to speak. The shopkeeper waved his right hand, and a guandao whizzed out from the counter and landed in his hand. Chapter 775. However, since you've already left, why bother coming back? The shopkeeper swung the guandao in his hand and stroked his beard. He then said in a deep voice, "Our little inn is too small to accommodate a god like you. Please pack your things and leave this place. The Red Dust Society doesn't want to get involved in this trouble." Heh. Lin Yuan chuckled. It was not common for eyes to change color, but ordinary people would not think that a god had descended. After all, gods had not appeared in the eyes of the world for a long time. They would either guard the heaven's gate or hide in remote places like the endless sea. As for those Een gods, they did not have the means to descend and possess people. The Red Dust Society actually knew about the possession of gods. Immediately, Lin Yuan's assessment of the danger in his heart increased by a few levels. Some karma has already been involved. Don't you think it's a bit too ridiculous to want to get off halfway? With a light hook of his right hand, a chair slid behind him. Immediately, he sat down and said in a deep voice, "When I accepted Guan Zhaoshan's money, you guys didn't say that you couldn't handle this trouble. Now that things have gotten out of hand, you want to leave? Have you asked for my opinion?" Huh. With the emphasis of, huh, the servants in the inn all knelt on the ground, their bodies trembling. Even the shopkeeper with the guandao almost broke his cultivation. The dragon might of a mountain lord was not something a mere mortal evolution state or airborne state cultivator could handle. That's why I'm asking, who are you? The shopkeeper's face kept trembling. He resisted the urge to kneel and asked. Well said, I'm just a god of the northern frontier, the Blackwater Dragon King, Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan raised his hand and snapped his fingers, retracting the dragon might. The vertical line that appeared vaguely in his multicolored eyes disappeared. In an instant, the shopkeeper was like a mute who had eaten coptis. His expression was bitter, but he could not open his mouth. In the entire Shenwu dynasty, where was there a safer place than the northern frontier? The southern interest groups could not fight the Sky Demon. Even the previous confrontation was barely possible because of the Baixing Navy's troops at Wei River. Some time ago, the Baixing Navy was suddenly transferred, and the southern interest groups instantly collapsed. Not to mention fighting the Sky Demon, even those demon sect members who were hibernating here easily defeated Lei Qiuming and the others. However, the Northern Territory was in existence that could directly confront the Sky Demon army with their chariots, horses, and cannons. Since the Red Dust Society knew about the arrival of the gods, it was impossible for them not to know about the existence of the Guardians of the Elysium. The heavenly demons were jumping around quite happily, but anyone with a little bit of knowledge knew that the heavenly demons were destined to not be able to cause much trouble. They were like grasshoppers jumping around after autumn, one day less and less. However, the northern frontier was different. As long as the northern frontier could survive the battle with the Sky Demon, it could directly replace the Shenwu dynasty in the future and become the 7th dynasty in the world. Who would be willing to offend the northern frontier? If the descending god was someone else, the Red Dust Society would not be afraid of revenge whether they killed or banished the god. However, the one who came was Lin Yuan, this evil star. He immediately felt that it was impossible to get off the tiger. Thinking about the dragon might just now, the shopkeeper did not suspect Lin Yuan's identity. After all, the Red Dust Society was a forest organization that made a living in the south. It was not the first time they had encountered the monsters of the endless sea. The dragon might was not unfamiliar to the Red Dust Society. If the one who emitted the dragon might just now was not Lin Yuan, then the situation would be even worse. Including the 4 ancestral dragons, the dragon race of the 4 seas only had 6 dragon gods. Any one of them could directly destroy the Red Dust Society with a stomp of their foot. The consequences were much more serious than offending Lin Yuan of the northern frontier. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I did not know that the Blackwater Dragon King was here. Please forgive me for my previous offense. After all, the shopkeeper was an all-powerful figure in the forest. It was standard for him to know when to yield and when to stand tall. After weighing the difference between the Red Dust Society and the northern frontier, he decisively lowered his head and did not mention anything about banishing Lin Yuan. Then, the shopkeeper changed the topic and said again, I have only read about the gods descending in the ancient books of the Red Dust Society. I heard that those who offer their bodies to the gods will have the gods help them fulfill their last wishes. Otherwise, the gods will directly expel the gods' consciousness from their bodies. I wonder if the Red Dust Society can help with Miss Guan's last wishes? Lin Yuan was currently the most popular Golden Thigh. Even the Red Dust Society had no reason not to curry favor with him. Even if they could not obtain Lin Yuan's gift, they could still befriend Lin Yuan. In the future, when the northern frontier established a dynasty, the Red Dust Society would not be included in the hit list. The Red Dust Society knows a lot of secrets. That's good. Guan Zhaoshan chose the Red Dust Society to protect her when she was in trouble. This matter has karma with the Red Dust Society, so it's best if you are willing to help. Lin Yuan's eyes turned cold. He said slowly, the destruction of the Guan family should not be hidden from the eyes and ears of the Red Dust Society. I want you to kill everyone involved in this matter. Can you do it? The shopkeeper smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said bitterly, the Dragon King thinks too highly of the Red Dust Society. Yes, the Red Dust Society does know a lot of secrets, but that's because we have a long history, not because we are powerful. If you want us to deal with Lei Chuming's lackeys, there's no problem. However, the mastermind behind the destruction of the Guan family is the Flying Star sect, a quasi-first-rate sect in the south. They have a Kongming realm ancestor and 3 half-step Kongming realm elders. It's said that the sect master is about to enter the Kongming realm. With such strength, even if the Supreme Dragon King comes out of seclusion, the Red Dust Society will not be able to deal with them. Lin Yuan was stunned again. The first time he was stunned was because the shopkeeper saw through his aura concealment. This time, he was stunned because of the Flying Star sect's strength. 1 Kongming realm expert and 4 half-step Kongming realm experts. This kind of strength was enough to be listed as a super first-rate sect in the northern frontier. However, in the south, it was only a quasi-first-rate sect. It seemed that the south, where the Guardians of the Elysium were active, was much more complicated than he thought. That's not a problem. I will take care of the Flying Star sect. However, the rest of the trash can't be let go. This king can't be bothered to search house by house. Lin Yuan waved his hand lightly. Then, he said word by word, do you understand this king's intentions? I will definitely do it. I will send a message to the Supreme Dragon King and have him do it himself. Under Lin Yuan's oppressive gaze, the shopkeeper trembled and nodded repeatedly. This king has always been fair in his rewards and punishments. The Red Dust Society will help you, and this king will not let you work for nothing. If there are any enemies of the Red Dust Society in Julu City, you can take revenge. This king will take care of them for you. Lin Yuan slowly narrowed his eyes. When he finished speaking, a look of joy flashed across the shopkeeper's face. Chapter 776. 3 days later. Lu Julu City, Iron Hand Gang's headquarters. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 7 Mortal Evolution State Cultivator. Gained 5 attribute points. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 5 Mortal Evolution State Cultivator. Gained 3 attribute points. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 1 Airborne State Cultivator. Gained 20 attribute points. One system notification after another flashed before his eyes, but Lin Yuan didn't feel anything. He just opened the system panel and distributed the attributes one by one. Although he was jealous, Lin Yuan was already used to the terrifying potential of this body. Moreover, this body would completely belong to him after the mission was completed. What was the point of being jealous? Congratulations, host. You have completed the breakthrough mission. Sweep the Lulanlu Zhulu city. Mission reward, 50 attribute points and a third-rate mental cultivation method. Congratulations, host. You have successfully broken through to the level 1 of the airborne state. Please keep up the good work. The prompt of the completion of the breakthrough task was also refreshed. Lin Yuan exhaled a long breath of foul air and stood on the mountain of corpses and sea of blood with a carefree smile. He had his reasons for wanting to help the Red Dust Society get rid of their obstacles. The Flying Star sect didn't need to be completely wiped out. Clearly, it wasn't necessary to deal with the terrifying beings of the Empyrean and even half-step Empyrean states. After all, the mastermind behind the destruction of the Guan family was only the big brother of the Flying Star sect. As for them, they were referring to the southern interest groups led by Lei Chuming. As mentioned before, with the strength of an old aristocratic family like the Guan family, even if they couldn't be compared to the Flying Star sect, once their foundation was revealed, even the Flying Star sect would have to think twice before acting. If it wasn't for Lei Chuming's fear of the Guan family's strength, even if the Flying Star sect's eldest senior brother had evil thoughts, he wouldn't have dared to make a move on the Guan family's beloved daughter. Therefore, Guan Zhaoshan's hatred for the Flying Star sect couldn't be compared to the southern interest groups at all. This was the biggest difference between them. Otherwise, they could be summed up with one word. Then again, the strength of the Flying Star sect's eldest senior brother should not be underestimated. After all, the Flying Star sect could be considered a super force in the northern frontier. In the cultivation world where the strong preyed on the weak, those who could firmly suppress the other disciples of the Flying Star sect and become the eldest senior brother naturally did not rely on their qualifications. After all, on the path of cultivation, the one who reached the top was the teacher was not just a saying. If you met someone younger than you but with a higher cultivation base, you had to obediently address them as senior brother. Otherwise, you would not even know how you died. The man was at least at the pinnacle of the airborne realm, but it was apparent that he was capable of more than that. Furthermore, if the senior brother of the Flying Star sect were to personally come to Zhulu City to capture Guan Zhaoshan, there would have been seniors of considerable powers accompanying him. In the worst-case scenario, the skills that Lin Yuan could use would definitely be used to greet that senior. Against that senior, there was a high chance that he could only rely on his own cultivation. If it had been an ordinary cultivator, they would probably have had no choice but to sit and wait for death or pray that things wouldn't be that bad. But Lin Yuan was different. He was a man with cheats. He used the Red Dust Society's name to clean up the Lulan forces that were entrenched in Zhulu City. On the surface, the Red Dust Society would naturally help him clean up the mess. While earning the Red Dust Society's favor, he could also openly kill people in Zhulu City to earn attribute points. Furthermore, he had to be more ruthless when dealing with the Flying Star sect. After all, even if he could easily take the life of the chief disciple of the Flying Star sect, it would not make the Flying Star sect fear him. Instead, it would make the Flying Star sect hate him. When the time came, there would be endless trouble that would be enough to make Lin Yuan suffer. He wanted to get rid of the evil cult and stab the Sky Demon Core in the back. If he was held back by the Flying Star sect, things would be bad. As such, it was best to kill a powerful elder of the Flying Star sect to show his fangs. That way, the Flying Star sect would have to consider the necessity of making a mortal enemy of an extraordinary cultivator if they wanted to take revenge. From today onward, the Iron Palm clan will be removed from Zhulu City. A member of the Red Dust Society announced the destruction of the Iron Palm clan with a smile. At the same time, the second dragon head of the Red Dust Society, who had already arrived in Zhulu City, was slightly stunned. He looked at the figure standing on the mountain of corpses and opened his mouth, but no words came out. It's just a few Lulan gangs. Their hands are stained with the blood of innocent people. Second dragon head used to be a constable of the Shenwu dynasty. You don't have to grieve for these people and have evil intentions towards me, do you? The Red Dust Society's power is not something that these simple local bullies can compare to. Moreover, we're on the same boat now, aren't we? Unknowingly, Lin Yuan had already passed by him. He stretched out his hand and patted his shoulder, leaving a slender bloody handprint. Then he strode away. Simple. Second Dragon Head felt that he could hardly breathe. The Iron Palm clan could barely be considered a third-rate Lulan gang. They were nothing to the Red Dust Society, but to a branch in Julu City, they were an opponent that they had nothing to fear. Almost all the members of the Iron Palm clan were at the middle stage of the mortal evolution state, and the leader of the Iron Palm clan was at the early stage of the airborne realm. Such a force was not considered strong in Julu City. At the very least, the shopkeeper of Julu City could deal with them. However, there was an alliance between the various gangs. Once the shopkeeper of Julu City made a move, he would have to face at least 5 airborne realm cultivators. However, Lin Yuan's move would not attract the attention of the other gangs. In other words, they would not treat him as if he was facing a great enemy. Therefore, under Lin Yuan's thunderous means, the various gangs were taken down one by one. In total, nearly 10,000 people died in Lin Yuan's hands. This directly made some of the lesser forces who were secretly clamoring to rise to the top not even dare to think about dividing up the territory. At present, the Red Dust Society could be said to be the strongest among the Lulan gang in Julu City. In Lin Yuan's words, such actions could only be described as simple. Then again, after seeing Lin Yuan's means, it was indeed very difficult for him to have any ill intentions toward Lin Yuan. Even without the identity of the Blackwater Dragon King, such a murderous god was not someone the Red Dust Society wanted to mess with. Lin Yuan did not have such thoughts. He just felt a little helpless. Over 10,000 cultivators were killed by him, and a large number of attribute points were wasted. After all, before the breakthrough mission was completed, the attribute points accumulated to the upper limit would not continue to increase. Otherwise, his current strength would not be as simple as being at the airborne realm level 1. What was more troublesome was that he had already killed all the people in Julu City. If he were to kill the other Lulan gang, the Red Dust Society might not be able to handle it. If he were to do something wrong, terrifying Lulan gang cultivators might come. If he did not make a move against the Lulan gang, the other forces would either have clans or sects behind them. They were not people to be trampled on. The progress of his strength seemed to have stagnated. Chapter 777. Julu City was not considered a small city. After all, a power like the Red Dust Assembly would disdain to set up a branch in a third-rate or even unrated human gathering place. In the entire south, Julu City was considered a second-rate city. A step further and it would be a first-rate city. In the south, which had always been attacked by the sea demons, there was only one first-rate city, and it was close to the Central Plains. A city like this would definitely have a huge flow of people, so the speed at which news spread could be said to be terrifying. Within 3 days, Lin Yuan had used the name of the Red Dust Assembly to wipe out almost all the Lulan forces in Julu City. Very quickly, the news spread to other cities, instantly attracting the attention of countless people. This kind of thing that could change the situation of an entire region with one's own strength. The most recent was probably the northern frontier's Black Jiao's destruction of mountain-blocking city, thus establishing the path to dominating the north. That was enough to be recorded in the history books, the Berserk Python Calamity. And this time, this woman called Guan Zhaoshan had slaughtered her way through the Lulan forces in Julu City. Other than the Red Dust Assembly, almost all the famous forces in the underworld had been wiped out, leaving only the small fries in Julu City. Although it could not be compared to the Berserk Python Calamity in the north, the title of Killing Demon was indeed placed in front of Guan Zhaoshan's name. Although the Lulan cultivators were also cultivators, compared to ordinary cultivators from aristocratic families or sects, they had a heavier habit of the underworld. For example, in Lin Yuan's previous life in Japan, if one did not have a certain status in the underworld, even tattoos were not allowed. In the Tianwu continent, this practice was even heavier. The Lulan cultivators rarely had nicknames. Once they had a nickname, they would show their signboard in the underworld, and the leaders of ordinary forces would have to treat them with respect. As for those Lulan cultivators who did not have the strength to give themselves nicknames, they usually did not have a good ending. For example, in the ancient underworld of Lin Yuan's previous life, people who gave themselves nicknames such as Invincible Divine Fists were basically people who claimed their nicknames today and might die tomorrow in the Tianwu continent. This time, although the nickname, Grim Demon, was forcibly given to Lin Yuan by busybodies, there was no lack of Lulan forces behind the scenes pushing the matter. The Greenwood faction that could establish their territory in a place like Zhulu City was basically an outsider. They were just a branch of the Red Dust faction or a branch of a certain faction. Naturally, the headquarters behind these people wouldn't just watch the Red Dust faction monopolize Zhulu City. But there was nothing they could do. They couldn't find fault with the Red Dust Society. This was because the Red Dust Union could have done things according to the rules when it came to clearing out the forest in Deer Chasing City. In advance, they would openly hand over letters of challenge to the various Lulan factions, stating that if the newcomer wanted to be promoted, they would have to stain their hands with blood as proof of their allegiance. This was basically a rule that had been passed down for a long time in the Lulan factions. If you're not convinced, you can find a newcomer from your own clan who hasn't taken the position yet to come out and kick the Red Dust Society's ass. But this obviously wasn't realistic. Because the Guan clan had already been destroyed, it wasn't hard to find information on Guan Zhaoshan. With a bit of effort, they could find Guan Zhaoshan's previous records. Therefore, Guan Zhaoshan was indeed a newcomer with a clean background. But for a newcomer to challenge the various factions and win, the success rate was pitifully low. With this kind of strength, talent, and a clean background, why would he want to join a Lulan faction? Wouldn't it be better to find a sect to join? Now that the Shenwu dynasty had collapsed and Lei Chuming's whereabouts were unknown, although the demon sect's disciples had secretly infiltrated, it wasn't that easy to swallow up the alliance formed by the various clans and sects in the south. Currently, the clans and sects were the ones in charge in the south. After joining these factions, they could do whatever they wanted. Even if they did some dirty business, as long as they didn't go too far and made it known to everyone, not only would the local government not pursue the matter, they would even help cover it up. Finding a genius comparable to Guan Zhaoshan to kick the Red Dust Society's ass could no longer be described as difficult. It could even be described as impossible. However, although the Red Dust Society's actions were in accordance with the rules of the Lulan faction, it wasn't flawless. After all, Guan Zhaoshan was still a newcomer. Even if she succeeded, she would only have the right to speak in the Red Dust Society. In the big circle of the Lulan faction, Guan Zhaoshan was still a nobody. As long as they put in some effort and gave her a nickname, then according to the rules of the Jianghu, any Lulan faction cultivator who wasn't satisfied with Guan Zhaoshan's nickname of Grim Demon could come and challenge her. As long as the gap between the two sides wasn't a big realm, then it was in accordance with the rules. While the undercurrent of the Lulan faction was surging in the south. Zhulu City, Red Dust Inn. Second Dragon Head smiled bitterly with an apologetic face. He lowered his voice and said, "Dragon King, I'm really sorry. We didn't think this through before." The Supreme Dragon Head didn't expect that the Lulan faction would be so shameless as to use such underhanded means to kill you, a genius belonging to the Red Dust Society. At this point, he paused and said with a sincere face, "What the Supreme Dragon Head means is that if you avoid the battle, although you'll lose some face, there won't be any other way to deal with you. We still have a big plan and don't have the time to play with those Lulan faction who are only thinking about revenge." Lin Yuan looked at Second Dragon Head meaningfully. His right hand kept tapping lightly on the back of the chair. He didn't believe a single word of this nonsense. They were all foxes from the same mountain. Why did they have to talk about strange stories? Those Lulan faction could think of a way to deal with him so quickly. How could Red Dust Taoist, who was known to be able to suppress the Lulan faction in the south and intimidate the other Lulan faction in seclusion all year round, not think of this? However, after Second Dragon Head said this, he really did have Lin Yuan's best interests at heart. After all, if Lin Yuan avoided the battle, it would be equivalent to admitting defeat to the entire Lulan faction in the south. He would lose face and his nickname. However, it was different for the Red Dust Society. If Lin Yuan admitted defeat or lost the battle, the Red Dust Society would have to obediently spit out all the territories and profits they had taken. They would also have to compensate each faction with a large sum of resources as a sign of defeat. For the Red Dust Society, who knew the inner workings of grim demon Guan Zhao, this suggestion was a huge loss. Lin Yuan lowered his head. What he lost was Guan Zhaoshan's face. After all, it was just a shell. If it weren't for his outstanding talent, Lin Yuan wouldn't have cared. However, the Red Dust Society definitely didn't know how special Guan Zhaoshan's shell was to Lin Yuan, so they wouldn't consider it. Speaking of which, Lin Yuan lowered his head and lost Guan Zhaoshan's face. At the same time, not only would the Red Dust Society have to spit out the territories they had recently taken, they would also have to pay a large sum of money. Chapter 778. This amount of gold and silver was definitely not a small amount. After all, Lin Yuan had killed nearly 10,000 members of the Forest Alliance, including 5 who were in the airborne realm. It would have cost a lot to train such combat forces. Even if the Red Dust Society did not foot the entire bill, they would have to pay at least 1/10 of the resources to those Forest Alliance forces. Even with the Red Dust Society's size, paying out such a huge amount of resources was enough to hurt them. That was why Lin Yuan's eyes became meaningful when he thought about the whole thing. Are you guys betting that I'll definitely accept the challenge? Lin Yuan had a playful smile on his face as he asked softly. In truth, it was not difficult to guess what the Red Dust Society was thinking after thinking about it calmly. After all, Lin Yuan had always been domineering toward other forces ever since he came into being. The only time he bowed his head was when he was dealing with the Guardian of Heaven's Gate. However, that level of information was already a secret among secrets. If the Red Dust Society knew about it, it could only mean that there was at least a Guardian of Heaven's Gate behind the Red Dust Society. Would Lin Yuan, who had always been domineering, bow his head to a group of airborne realm cultivators of the Forest Alliance? The answer was hard to say, but there was a high chance that he would not. Even if Lin Yuan had guessed the Red Dust Society's plot, it would still be the same. After all, he was a king. A king was not someone who would bow his head. Even if he did, it would be for the benefit of the entire force. The current situation was not one where a king had to bow his head. As for what would happen if Lin Yuan really did bow his head? The Red Dust Society was working for Lin Yuan. Now that they had paid a huge price, Lin Yuan would have no choice but to face the Red Dust Society with guilt when they met in the future. Even if the 7th dynasty was established, the Red Dust Society would be able to stay at the top of the Southern Forest Alliance for at least 10 years, let alone 100 years. As for the North, the Red Dust Society did not dare to have such extravagant hopes. That was the territory of the Monster Emperor Association, and there was no need to talk about who was behind the Association of Monster Emperors. Snatching food from Lin Yuan, wasn't that just courting death? What happened to the remaining members of the Jiao family was enough to sound the alarm for these cultivators who were active in the dark side of the world. If they stood against Lin Yuan, once they lost, they would have no way out. If they were valuable, they would have a chance to be a dog. If they weren't, they could refer to those aristocratic families that had been destroyed in the north. After being exposed by Lin Yuan, the second dragon head's expression only changed slightly. He quickly nodded and said indifferently, "We are indeed betting that the Dragon King will not avoid the challenge. After all, from your previous behavior of not leaving anyone alive once you attacked, I reckon that you are actually very interested in killing people. I think that you have no reason to refuse these heads that are delivered to your door. Is this your idea, or Daoist red dusts?" Lin Yuan tilted his head and looked at the heavy traffic on the street below. He sized up the second dragon head from the corner of his eyes, still with a meaningful smile on his lips. The question he asked was like a soul interrogation. The second dragon head's expression changed several times. It only took him a few seconds to go from a slight frown to a face full of indifference. It was like a famous face change in a Sichuan opera. The Supreme Dragon Head has set off personally to track down the whereabouts of Lei Qiuming and the others. He is busy with official business and has no time to deal with the affairs of Zhulu City, so, the second Dragon Head replied with an indifferent expression. Since they had already shed all pretenses, there was no need to keep up the pretense. You're really not a good dog. Lin Yuan laughed, and the smile on his face no longer had that meaningful look. In the afternoon of the same day, the news that the grim demon, Guan Zhaoshan, had accepted the challenge and directly issued a challenge to all the cultivators of the southern forest. This news spread like wildfire from Zhulu City. Other than the news that shook the entire southern forest, which even attracted the attention of many sects and forces, there was another piece of news that only spread within the Red Dust Society: the second dragon head had died. The second dragon head, who was at the peak of the airborne realm and only one step away from the heavenly strength realm, was severely injured by a single slash after a secret meeting with Guan Zhaoshan at the Red Dust Tavern. The two sides then fought and almost tore down half of the tavern. In the end, Guan Zhaoshan paid the price of minor injuries to behead the second dragon head. The death of the second dragon head, who had been in charge of the Red Dust Society together with Daoist Red Dust, was a big deal. After all, Daoist Red Dust was only half a step away from the Kongming realm. He had been in seclusion for many years, so the second dragon head was basically in charge of all the affairs of the Red Dust Society. The former Supreme Dragon Head had become an existence used by the Red Dust Society to intimidate other forces. The second Dragon Head was more like the president of the Red Dust Society. After several purges, there were actually more people who were loyal to the second Dragon Head than to Daoist Red Dust. There was no lack of secret meetings and declarations in the Red Dust Society to punish Guan Zhaoshan. However, to the surprise of the Southern Lulan Society, Guan Zhaoshan, who killed the second dragon head, was not promoted according to the rules of the Lulan Society, nor was he punished by the Red Dust Society. Instead, he continued to stay at the Red Dust Tavern as if he was an outsider. The Red Dust Society of Zhulu City did not do anything at all. It was as if the one who died was not their second dragon head, but an unrelated stranger. In truth, Lin Yuan's identity was also a secret in the Red Dust Society. Other than the members of the Red Dust Society of Zhulu City, who came into contact with Lin Yuan, only Daoist Red Dust and the second dragon head knew about him. The other members of the Red Dust Society really thought that Guan Zhaoshan was one of them. All of the clamor came to an abrupt end when the news of the second dragon head's death reached Daoist Red Dust's ears. That was because the Supreme Dragon Head, who had become a weapon of deterrence instead of a living person, had only said one thing: "It's good that he's dead." All of the clamor came to an abrupt end. Now that the second dragon head was dead, Daoist Red Dust naturally had the final say in the Red Dust Society. What else could they say if their boss said it was good that the second dragon head had died? They could not go against the grim demon and old Ding, who had been in the limelight recently, for the sake of a dead man, could they? Of course, there were still people who wanted to avenge the second dragon head. However, the saying that the tea cooled down after the person left did not happen to everyone. Even the Lulan Society, which was an incomparably filthy existence behind the scenes, had no lack of loyal and righteous people. It was just that in this circle, evil people occupied the majority. However, before these people could complete their secret plans, most of them disappeared without a trace. Those who remained were scared out of their wits. They packed up their valuables and fled to the Azure River Dynasty, not daring to stay in the Red Dust Society's territory any longer. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Supreme Dragon Head wanted to reclaim his authority and began to clean up the cultivators who were loyal to the second dragon head. Chapter 779. The next day, early in the morning, it's the fifth day. Lin Yuan ended his cross-legged state of cultivation and let out a long sigh. His cultivation had reached level 3 of the airborne realm. For an ordinary person who had just embarked on the path of cultivation, such a speed was terrifying. Even someone as powerful as Lin Yuan had to turn into a lemon spirit again. How many attribute points would a full cycle of demonic power in his body add without the greenleaf water lotus? It didn't even reach 1 point. How many attribute points would a full cycle of spiritual qi in Guan Zhaoshan's body add? In the beginning, he was not used to the meridians of the human body, adding 1 to 3 attribute points per cycle. After getting used to the purifying haze of the human body, the speed of the cycle became faster, adding 5 to 8 attribute points per cycle. In other words, Even if this body were to just sit cross-legged and cultivate, the efficiency would be comparable to the attribute points Lin Yuan's original body gained from fighting bloody battles back when he was at the Wisdom Realm. In 4 days, he went from an ordinary person to level 3 of the Airborne Realm, which was what cultivators called the peak of the early phase of the Airborne Realm. If such a speed of cultivation were to spread, others would not think of him as a monster. They would think that he was the reincarnation of some powerful being who came to Zhulu City and found something left behind in his previous life, making rapid progress from there. There would be olive branches, but there would also be greedy covetousness. Lin Yuan did not have such a hidden danger before, because he was lucky to get a tiger's skin. Forces at the level of the ancient demon court had been wiped out in the long river of history, but their power was still there. Even someone as powerful as the guardian of the celestial gate dared not offend them. Therefore, those greedy people only dared to dream about it. Moreover, the heritage left behind by monsters might not be suitable for humans. However, Guan Zhaoshan's body was different. He could not say that this body was also the successor of the ancient demon court, could he? Even if he said that and people believed him, it would not stop those people who were blinded by greed. Who would not want an opportunity that could make one's cultivation soar? It was especially so for those old people who would never let go of such a fat piece of meat like Guan Zhaoshan. That was probably the trouble of being happy. If one's cultivation rose too quickly, it would attract countless people who did not know what was good for them. For example, get out here, Lin Yuan said indifferently. His white right hand was already on the hilt of Guan Shanshue's sword. For a bladesman, it was fundamental to not let the saber leave their body. For most fanatical bladesmen, the saber in their hands was more important than their lives. While Lin Yuan was not a true swordsman, being at the 3rd level of the Airborne Realm was not enough for him to be able to sleep soundly in Zhulu City without any worries. His strongest weapon was to feed Guan Shanshue with his blood aura day and night without using any of the system's skills. Your grim demon Guan Zhaoshan? Following a question that sounded like a statement, a slender white figure appeared in the room. Shua, without any hesitation, Lin Yuan's Guan Shanshue slashed out. The difference between his own realm and the opponent's realm allowed him to know the specific effects of the opponent's attribute panel once the Eye of God was activated. Guan Shanshue did not have any special abilities and only had a few unorthodox martial arts. Even if he was an average Airborne Realm cultivator, or even an Airborne Realm cultivator with no future, he might not be able to make a breakthrough to the Heavenly Strength realm even if he died. A piece of trash that was not qualified to make Lin Yuan use his blade nurturing technique, but it was good to use him as a warm-up. You have a bad temper that doesn't match your pretty face. The man in white smiled and flipped his right hand. An iron folding fan appeared in his hand, and he casually went to meet Guan Shanshue. Clang! Sparks flew when the weapons collided. The man in white's face stiffened slightly. He looked at the iron folding fan, which was completely covered in frost, and the frost that began to spread to his right hand. He cried out, "A magic item?" Lin Yuan remained silent. He drew his sword and swung it again, going straight for the man's face. At this moment, Lin Yuan's face changed slightly. When Guan Shanshue was still 3 centimeters away from the man in white's face, he abruptly stopped the momentum of the sword. He tapped his foot and directly broke out of the window. His figure was as fast as a ghost. After a few breaths, Lin Yuan had already appeared in a mansion. Lin Yuan quickly walked into the study and tapped a bookshelf several times in a row according to the rhythm in his memory. Accompanied by a soft crisp sound, a secret door opened from the ground not far away. Immediately, Lin Yuan stepped into it, and with another crisp sound of the secret door closing, his whole person was hidden in the darkness. This was a safe house. It was made by the embroidered uniform guards. Back then, Qin Yu, Zhao Guangchong, and the others were attached to the south to carry out the mission. Naturally, it was impossible for them to directly kill their way out in the south like Taishan. Before they left, the embroidered uniform guards quickly operated. Each chiliarch bought mansions and built secret passages and shelters. Except for the parts that they were responsible for, the safe houses that the other chiliarchies were responsible for were all kept secret. Even if Lin Yuan's enemies knew that he was hiding in the safe house, unless they could capture all the embroidered uniform guards who were responsible for building the safe house, they could only try their luck. Of course, capturing them was one thing. If they hoped that the embroidered uniform guards created by Lin Yuan would betray him, they would have to rely on the taboo mind control ability. A simple interrogation by torture was meaningless. Moreover, the underground shelter of the safe house also needed to be opened according to a specific rhythm. If the rhythm was wrong, then the entrance would be directly blown up. Not only would it waste time to clean it up, but it would also give a warning to those hiding underground. At the same time, there were secret passages leading to other shelters and secret exits underground, including food, water, and other preparations. It was almost to the extreme of caution. However, Lin Yuan didn't expect that when Qi Mu and the others were in the south, they didn't use the safe house. After it was built, it had always been in an abandoned state. Except for the embroidered uniform guards who lurked in the south occasionally coming back to exchange information and clean up, these safe houses were basically not used. It could be said that since the safe house was built, the first person to use the underground shelter was actually Lin Yuan himself, who was in charge of the northern frontier remotely controlling the overall situation. After a cup of tea. Endless sea, Willow Stone Sea. Your summoning disrupted my plan. I need a reasonable explanation. Lin Yuan's main body slowly opened his eyes, looked at the puppet body that released him, and said coldly. Although the other party was just a strand of divine sense, other than not being able to exert 100% of its strength, it was almost no different from him. Logically speaking, if nothing major happened, it would not release its main body and use divine sense to communicate with him to call him back. Chapter 780. The puppet maintained its cold appearance and said indifferently, "What you're worried about didn't happen. However, the higher-ups of the Sea Demon Guild that you asked Cyrus to contact arrived at the Willow Stone region yesterday. He's probably an ancestral demon powerhouse and could tell that I'm just a clone at a glance. He also told me that if you're sincere about cooperating, you should use your real body to communicate with him instead of using a clone to brush him off." That's all? Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly as he resisted the urge to curse. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was also him, he would have killed him. The white-robed man from before was most likely not from an aristocratic family or sect. After all, Guan Zhaoshan's resume was there, and the Flying Star sect was obviously standing on the opposite side. Even if Guan Zhaoshan's aptitude was noticed, those sects would have to think twice whether they coveted those rumored treasures, inheritances, or simply wanted to accept Guan Zhaoshan as their disciple. The Flying Star sect was not to be trifled with. A Kongming realm ancestor, 3 half-step Kongming realm elders, and a sect master who could break through to the Kongming realm at any time. This did not include the hidden forces that might exist. Just on paper, their strength was so strong. Without a certain foundation, they would not dare to come into contact with the hot potato that was Guan Zhaoshan. Even if they did come into contact, the person who came should have a high status in the sect. If they were not sincere, they would not have gained Guan Zhaoshan's trust, let alone the Flying Star sect. As for the white-robed man, whether it was in terms of strength or cultivation method, they could be said to be trash among trash. It was even inferior to the mental cultivation method that came with the third-rate martial arts, the Thousand Mountain Saber technique. This mental cultivation method was, after all, a way to circulate qi to support the saber technique. It was not impossible to use it for cultivation, but breaking through to the Heaven Star realm was the limit. A sect that could nurture a Kongming realm cultivator, even an outer disciple, would not cultivate such a low-level cultivation method. A sect of that level would not send a servant disciple to come in contact with someone like Guan Zhaoshan, who could stir up a storm in the south, right? Therefore, that guy was most likely a Lulan cultivator. It was equivalent to giving attribute points and reputation to him. But because of such a small matter, he let him go just like that. He did not know if that guy would flee at the sight of him when he returned. My situation is special after all. Even if I wanted to explain, he probably wouldn't believe me. The puppet shrugged helplessly and shook its head. So, for the sake of that plan, I can only summon you back. Normally speaking, even if one had reached the ancestral demon realm, it was impossible for one's divine sense to be completely independent. That was because that was the authority of a god. As mentioned before, Lin Yuan built some temples of the Blackwater Dragon King in the north and attached a wisp of his divine thoughts to the Dragon King sculptures in those temples. By listening to the prayers of believers and receiving incense offerings, these divine thoughts slowly grew. If the time was long enough, these divine thoughts could even break away from Lin Yuan and become an independent existence. At the current stage, it was impossible for these will to exist independently. However, after they returned to the main body and separated into different objects, they could barely become clones with the same memories and personality as Lin Yuan. However, they were not independent existences. Lin Yuan was still the main body and would not give birth to their own will. However, they all had the same way of thinking as Lin Yuan. Under various circumstances, they would make the same choice as Lin Yuan's main body. Therefore, Lin Yuan was at ease to leave Willow Rock Waters to it. He descended into Guan Zhaoshan's body and prepared to move around in the south. Because in a sense, it was no different from Lin Yuan himself being in charge of the Lushur Sea area. It was just that it was an inferior product that couldn't do anything. Take me to see that guy. Lin Yuan spoke indifferently. The dissatisfaction in his tone had been restrained. Since he was already here, he might as well finish his business before leaving. He should be able to make it in time. However, the Siren Guild had yet to establish a new branch in Willow Rock Waters. After all, in a sense, the Siren Guild was only a loose guild system. Without absolute benefits, the Siren Guild's upper echelons could not even command their members at will. Therefore, they did not have much say. Want to establish a branch in different waters? If it were the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, they could just give the order and be done with it. However, even if the Siren Guild was not inferior to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, they still had to carefully manage their relationship with the rulers of the various waters. Only then could they proceed with establishing a branch. Some weak and remote rulers of the waters would definitely have to be thick-skinned and carefully curry favor with the Siren Guild to see if they could promote the development of the waters through the Siren Guild's branch. However, the Willow Rock Waters was a region with local specialties, a good geographical location, and decent strength. Naturally, the relationship between the two sides would have to be transferred. Therefore, when Lin Yuan's main body returned, the Siren Guild's upper echelon naturally had no reason to continue being pretentious. He quickly settled the matter at hand and appeared in front of Lin Yuan under Flood Dragon One's lead. Blackwater Dragon King, it's an honor to meet you at last. The Siren Guild's upper echelon, who looked like a crab boss, cupped his crab pincers at Lin Yuan and mimicked a human speech to Lin Yuan. However, due to the accent, the phrase, "It's an honor to meet you at last," sounded like raise a dog, letting out a long sigh. Lin Yuan resisted the urge to correct the other party's pronunciation. He said in a deep voice, "The reason I invited you here this time is that we, the Willow Rock Waters, wish to establish a deeper level of cooperation with the Siren Guild. We're not like the other waters that only allow your guild to establish a branch here and let everything run its own course. If this matter is successful, it will be greatly beneficial to both you and me. I still don't know what your guild's attitude is. The guild will definitely have no problem with establishing a branch. After all, this is our livelihood." The crab boss smiled and suddenly changed the topic. "However, since the Dragon King mentioned a deeper level of cooperation, I would like to ask the Dragon King to elaborate as this matter is beyond my authority. I need to know the details first before I can make my own judgment and send a message to the headquarters so that the management of the headquarters can convene a meeting to discuss this matter." A slippery crab. Lin Yuan quickly made a judgment. His position in the Wu Jinhai was very awkward. He had the dragon's bloodline in his body, but he was disliked by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. He did not join the evil dragon faction and instead wanted to form his own faction. Anyone who got involved with him at this time might have to face the wrath of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the future. Chapter 781. Under such circumstances, it was normal for the other party to decline when Lin Yuan proposed a deeper level of cooperation. If the crab boss agreed and could not wait to implement it, then Lin Yuan would feel guilty. However, time was limited, and Lin Yuan was too lazy to use words. After briefly summarizing the idea of the trade city and the content of the cooperation with the Sea Demon Guild, he became silent and quietly waited for the crab boss response. Large-scale shopping platform, trading center, auction house, logistics. The crab boss gently chewed on the terms of Lin Yuan's ideas, and his eyes lit up. The Sea Demon Guild was not a private property of any family or clan. Instead, it was a platform created by nearly 90% of the Sea Demon clans in the entire Endless Sea, except for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. It included a series of jobs such as mercenaries and caravans. It tried its best to develop the abilities and value of each sea demon. Therefore, to be able to become a high level in such an organization, even if the crab boss appearance was the same as the character in the cartoon of Lin Yuan's previous life, he could not be a good-for-nothing. On the contrary, the crab boss was definitely more intelligent and capable than what he showed. Therefore, after listening to Lin Yuan's idea, the crab boss realized the huge profit in it. Once the trade city that Lin Yuan mentioned was built, the Willow Stone Sea area would quickly rise. Strength would not be able to restrict the development of the Willow Stone Sea area. Just like how the Sea Demon Guild had a huge power, each clan had a limited number of sea demons. Even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could not break this limit. However, the Dragon clan's bloodline was noble, and their individual strength was much stronger than other sea demons. Under such a big environment, once Lin Yuan's resources became rich, even if his strength was average, it would not be a problem. As long as he was willing to spend money, not to mention hiring a large number of sea demons that wandered in the Endless Sea, even making the Sea Demon Guild listen to his orders was just a matter of whether he had enough money. However, there was a problem now. After realizing the benefits that Lin Yuan mentioned, the first thought that came to Boss Crab's mind was whether he could follow Lin Yuan's train of thought and borrow the enormous power of the Siren Guild to build a trading city before Lin Yuan did. However, the thought only flashed through his mind, and he quickly threw it out of his mind. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, even a demon beast could not be underestimated. Keeping a trump card was always a natural instinct of creatures that lived in danger all year round. With the Blackwater Dragon King's reputation in the Sky Martial continent, how could he possibly be so unguarded, sharing his thoughts one by one, and then allowing others to plagiarize and plagiarize? The answer was obviously no. Lin Yuan was definitely hiding some trump cards. The only reason he was willing to share his thoughts was because he didn't care that the Siren Guild was ahead of him in establishing a trade city. Why was he like this? It was because he had enough confidence. If the Siren Guild cooperated with him honestly, they could still get a mouthful of soup. However, if the Siren Guild tried to make Lin Yuan's thoughts into their own, then Lin Yuan would definitely have the ability to make them bleed. If that day really came, with Lin Yuan's special position in the Endless Sea, the Siren Guild would take action against him to vent their anger. They might even push the blame of plagiarizing Lin Yuan's thoughts onto him. Then again, even if they succeeded in plagiarizing, what benefits would it bring him? His position in the Siren Guild was not low, and there were many demon beasts waiting to be promoted. However, if he wanted to take a step forward, he would be restricted by his own strength. There was no possibility of that happening. If it did not help in raising his position, then what about the benefits? Obviously, there was none. With his wealth, not to mention taking a big bite out of it, he might not even be able to invest in it. Dragon King's thoughts are indeed good. Although I don't know much about business, after listening to you, I can feel that this matter is very promising. Ha ha ha. Unknowingly, the way Boss Crab addressed Lin Yuan had changed to a respectful form of address. Lin Yuan, who was sitting opposite Boss Xia, was slightly nervous. He was not a dragon that would come from all directions. Half of the reason why he was able to achieve what he had today was because of the rapid improvement brought by the system, and the other half was because of the various aptitudes and practical character that he had learned in his previous life. He was obviously not the same type as those who needed to use a cheat in terms of personality and charisma. Therefore, after this kind of respectful form of address, there would usually be a but or something similar. The cooperation with the Siren Guild should not be a problem. Judging from Boss Crab's attitude, he had given up on plagiarism and planned to take more benefits from Lin Yuan. The benefits that I can give to the Siren Guild have already been compromised to the limit. With all due respect, the only work that is suitable for the Siren Guild is logistics. I can give up the security of the mall and other projects, but it is already out of my own pocket. At the same time, out of trust in your guild, I will entrust the safety of myself, the mall, and the traders to you, isn't that right? Before Boss Crab could speak, Lin Yuan had already spoken first. Although it was not necessary for the Siren Guild to join in, it was better than nothing. Otherwise, if they did it alone, although they could not really pose a threat to him, they could indeed take away a part of the traffic. At the same time, it would make him feel disgusted. In addition, with the temperament of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, when the Great Old Ones were hanging over their heads, they would not do anything that would make both sides unhappy for the time being. However, once the trouble of the Great Old Ones was solved, they would definitely return to their old ways. At that time, the entire Endless Sea might be swept away. The City of Trade, which was rich with benefits, would naturally be on their hunting list. Although it was not that Lin Yuan could not guard the Endless Sea, it was indeed not necessary. If he tied himself to the Siren Guild and formed a community of interests, even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would have to think twice. If everything went well, and this matter was over, he would leave a spiritual clone to control the puppet body, which would be enough to deal with the daily affairs of the City of Trade. Well, Boss Crab smiled bitterly and clasped his fist. From a business point of view, the Dragon King has indeed given the Siren Guild enough face. He is even willing to give us the security work, which has exceeded my initial idea. However, from my point of view, looking at the delicious cake in front of me but not being able to take a bite, isn't it too cruel? Chapter 782. What do you mean? Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and his body suddenly exuded a dangerous aura. Damn, I was too careless. I forgot that the Siren Guild is a free and loose organization. Even if it's not like the Men in Black organization in Detective Conan where almost all of its members are traitors, it's impossible to expect them to work together and push things in a good direction. When it's time to be calculative, when it's time to be selfish, it's time to be selfish. This guy must have seen the profits of the City of Trade and wanted to eat until his mouth was full of oil before bringing in the Siren Guild. As the saying goes, the King of Hell is easy to provoke, but the little demons are hard to deal with. With Boss Crab's current attitude, if Lin Yuan wasn't willing to pay, then he shouldn't expect to have a deep cooperation with the Siren Guild. But even if he was willing to pay, he couldn't deduct the benefits given to the Siren Guild. He had to use his own money to satisfy Boss Crab's appetite. Moreover, it must be a trade dividend and not a one-time expense. Isn't this using a blunt knife to cut his flesh? Dragon King, I'm afraid you misunderstood. I'm not asking for benefits from you. Boss Crab smiled bitterly and said softly when he saw Lin Yuan's aura suddenly become dangerous. The distracting thoughts in his mind were cleared once again. When the crab boss faced Lin Yuan, he had to face the facts. With Lin Yuan's strength, it might be difficult to kill him, but if he mobilized the entire force of the Willow Rock waters, he wouldn't be able to leave this place alive. After all, if this cooperation didn't work out, he would have to report it to the higher-ups. Later on, the Siren Guild would definitely build a City of Trade before Lin Yuan. Sooner or later, both sides would become mortal enemies. Lin Yuan only accelerated the process of this matter and also prevented the hidden danger of the City of Trade project leaking out. What I mean is, when the people from the headquarters come to formally discuss the cooperation with you, I hope you can appoint my people to be responsible for the construction of the Willow Rock Waters branch. In return, I will help you persuade the higher-ups of the Siren Guild to kill the idea of copying your idea of building a City of Trade in the bud. In addition, the Brave Crab Tribe is the same as my tribe. We are both branches of the Crab Tribe, but we don't have much authority. If our cooperation is successful, I will propose for the Brave Crab Tribe in the next Crab Tribe meeting to increase the priority of the resources given to the Brave Crab Tribe. This can be considered as indirectly strengthening your strength. Boss Crab stood up and faced Lin Yuan. Then, he bowed slightly and said in a deep voice, "I hope you will consider it carefully. Your new business model will inevitably cause some sea demon clans to imitate it. If you cooperate with our Sea Demon Guild, you can at least ensure that those sea demon clans who imitate you will not dare to go too far, right?" Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Lin Yuan's idea was very profitable. Once this kind of business model, which had never been seen before in the Endless Sea, was launched, it would cause the other sea demon clans to imitate it and even suppress it. No matter what killing move Lin Yuan was hiding, it would still be troublesome. If the Siren Guild was the partner, they could indeed avoid this kind of trouble to the greatest extent. Moreover, after Lin Yuan joined hands with the Siren Guild, the credibility of both sides was far from what the other sea demon clans could compare to. This kind of project, even for the entire Siren Guild, was absolutely a high-quality project. Boss Crab wanted to seize this opportunity, and the other higher-ups of the Sea Guild would definitely not give it up easily. However, with Boss Crab's strength, he might not be able to compete with the other higher-ups of the Siren Guild. Thus, he could only inquire about Lin Yuan's words in advance and see if he could let this partner and investor appoint his people to be responsible for this matter. "I will think about it." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and fell into silence again. Jiao Yi also returned to the reception room and ordered the crab boss, who was full of expectations, to leave. Although Lin Yuan was not a businessman, since he wanted to establish a city of commerce, he definitely had to pursue profits. Although Boss Crab had stated his conditions, who could be sure that the other higher-ups of the Siren Guild who came to contact him would have conditions worse than his? If worse came to worst, he could just directly bid. The higher-ups of the Siren Guild who wanted to be in charge of the Willowstone Sea branch could directly sit together and use their own methods to see who could make Lin Yuan lower his head and agree to appoint the other party to be responsible. As the investor, Lin Yuan still had this bit of face. He was not afraid that the Siren Guild would flip the table. As for the higher-ups of the Siren Guild deciding who would be responsible for this matter, that was even more of a joke. If Lin Yuan insisted on appointing someone to be responsible, could the Siren Guild force people to come over? Once both sides reached an agreement, the Siren Guild would have the qualifications to flip the table. After Boss Crab was sent away, Lin Yuan turned his head and looked at the puppet body standing in the shadows. He said indifferently, "I still have things to deal with on my side. Keep an eye on things here. The next time there is something so arrogant, just get rid of it. Once our idea is understood by the Siren Guild, there will be plenty of people who are willing to cooperate. They have no right to raise conditions with us." "Okay." The puppet nodded imperceptibly and didn't say anything else. After an incense's time. In the underground shelter of Zhulu City. Guan Zhaoshan, who was controlled by Lin Yuan, slowly opened his eyes. A cold light bloomed as he walked toward the exit of the tunnel. He didn't try to hide it at all. When he came out, he broke a writing brush and left directly. A safe house was a one-time consumable item. No matter how well it was hidden, once it was used multiple times, it would be discovered by the eyes hidden in the dark. The reason he broke the brush earlier was to leave a mark to inform the embroidered uniform guards hiding in the south that this safe house had already been used once. Other than the daily concealment, all other activities would be abolished and carried out in other safe houses. As soon as he went out, Lin Yuan saw a familiar person through the eye of the god walking through the nearby streets with a woman in embroidered clothes. Who else could it be if it was not the person in white who ambushed him in the inn and was summoned by the divine sense clone? Lin Yuan was speechless. There was a saying that good words could not persuade a damned ghost. This guy ambushed him and was almost killed. Not only did he not run away in the middle of the night, but he also dared to walk around with a young lady in Zhulu City? How big of a king heart is this? Or, Lin Yuan's expression suddenly became strange. This guy actually did not realize the difference in strength between them. Did he think that Lin Yuan broke the window to escape because he was afraid? Chapter 783. Sister Wan, you don't have to worry about your father and the others. I went to the Red Dust Tavern not long ago, intending to meet the Grim Demon, who has been in the limelight recently. Guess what? That woman is a soft-footed prawn. I took her down with just a few punches and kicks. If she didn't run away at the last moment, I would have already taken her head and given it to your father as a betrothal gift. Lin Yuan, who was following behind the man in white, could only remain silent as he listened to the shameless boasting of the man in white. However, the bulging veins on his forehead proved that Lin Yuan was not in a stable state at the moment. You took me down with just a few kicks and punches? Why don't you go to heaven? You can't even take 2 hits from me. The man in white's right hand was wrapped in a thick leather glove. It was obvious that his right hand, which had been injured by Guan Xingshue's cold blade, had not been healed yet. If the erosion of such cold power was not removed as soon as possible, losing a right hand would be considered a good outcome. If the cold poison entered the body, his cultivation would be lost, and his body would be worse than that of an ordinary person, turning him into a sickly invalid. If he were a member of a prominent clan or a disciple of a sect who went down the mountain to train, he would have known very well how terrifying such cold poison was. Once infected, he would have tried to get rid of it as soon as possible. However, the man in white only found a pair of gloves and was done with it. He went straight to the lady and bragged about his strength. He even treated Lin Yuan, who he was no match for, as a stepping stone to pursue his sweetheart. That should be the sad thing about the ignorance of low-level cultivators from the Greenwood Forest. As for why he dared to brag like that, it was because he thought that Lin Yuan was doomed that day. With his strength and age, he was barely considered a top fighter among the Greenwood Forest cultivators. However, he was definitely not the main force that came to challenge Lin Yuan today. Even someone at the peak of the airborne realm might have shown up in Julu City today to see if Lin Yuan was worthy of the nickname Grim Demon. In the face of such combat strength, Lin Yuan was destined to die, even if he was stronger than the man in white. As long as Lin Yuan was dead, there would be no witnesses. He said that he defeated Lin Yuan with a few punches and kicks. Who would dare to stand up and refute him? The white-clothed man, who was chatting with his sweetheart, did not notice that Lin Yuan, whose face was as cold as ice, had already placed his right hand on the hilt of his saber, silently standing in the path he had to pass. Although he didn't raise his head, his intuition as a cultivator told him that someone was blocking his path. The white-robed man's face suddenly turned ferocious. He turned his head and growled, "Are you King crazy? Haven't you heard that a good dog doesn't block the way? Do you know that I'm..." His voice stopped abruptly. Because he had already turned his head and saw Guan Zhaoshan's delicate face. He suddenly remembered that Lin Yuan had almost split him into 2 halves from his face with the knife. It was still okay when he was facing the saber. After all, at the critical moment of death, other than the fear of death, he was only left with illusions like a merry-go-round lantern. He completely forgot to dodge or beg for mercy, even though he couldn't do one of these 2 things, and even if he did, it wouldn't have any effect. But when Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed and he broke out of the window, he discovered that he had not died. When he recalled that slash again, an endless sense of fear surged up. Because of this, he returned to the inn he was staying at. After bathing 3 times and changing 2 sets of clothes, he still felt that there was a stench on his body. With great difficulty, he overcame his psychological barrier and accompanied the sweetheart he had always pursued to go shopping. He had originally planned on boasting about his strength and winning the favor of his sweetheart. But when he turned his head, that killing god appeared in front of him again, like an emissary of hell who had forgotten to reap souls and had returned. Lin Yuan did not speak, nor did he draw his saber. He just stared at him with a cold face. In an instant, the legs of the man in white began to tremble. A familiar feeling surged again. A moment later, his sweetheart next to him covered her nose with her hand. Her face revealed an expression of disbelief. However, this was not important. What was important was that the god of death standing in front of him also revealed an undetectable look of disdain. Lin Yuan suddenly did not want to kill this trash. He felt that it would dirty his saber. The killing intent emitted from his body was slightly restrained. The man in white's face suddenly showed joy. He made a prompt decision to grab his sweetheart who was not too far away from him, and then pushed him hard towards Lin Yuan. At the same time, he flew back and shouted loudly, "His father is the chief of the Ganyu 36 Road Chain Stockade. He is one of the masters who came to kill you. If you want to kill him, kill him. Don't chase me." Lin Yuan. "TSK, there's something wrong with this style of yours, brother." His sweetheart was slightly stunned. Clearly, she did not expect that the bootlicker who had been thinking of ways to please her would not hesitate to wet his pants in the face of danger. Then, he pushed her out to block the saber. Then, she thought of the purpose of her father's journey from Ganyu to Deer City this time. It seemed to be a crusade against grim demon Guanzhaoshan. Then, this handsome young man with delicate features in front of her was the legendary grim demon who was killed by thousands of people in 3 heavens? Gulp. His sweetheart swallowed a mouthful of saliva and instantly lowered her head. She did not dare to look at Lin Yuan. At the same time, she called out in a soft and sweet voice, "Young hero Guan." "Oh. Good tea." Lin Yuan had goosebumps all over his body. Looking at the cold and indifferent woman who was with the man in white before changing in front of him, he could not help but think of a popular saying in his previous life, "Green tea and a dog will last forever." He seemed to have somehow ruined the relationship between a pair of God's chosen couple. The next moment, Lin, the man of steel, Yuan's expression changed slightly. He growled, "Scram." An ant who had not even stepped into the threshold of cultivation was even worse than the trash who had just escaped. He was not even interested in raising his saber. Such trash wanted to pretend to be a tea master in front of him? What a waste of time. Women will only affect my speed of drawing my saber. Crawl for me. On the other hand, the man in white who pushed his goddess out to block the saber didn't look guilty at all. Instead, he kept increasing his speed and flew in the direction of the red dust inn. The passers-by who were disturbed along the way all greeted him warmly with all kinds of things related to his family tree system, ancestral tombs, and feng shui. Grim demon Guanzhaoshan was afraid of the Lulan heroes, so he escaped from the Red Dust Inn and hid in Deer City to kill the disciples or descendants of the Lulan heroes who came to kill her. The daughter of the gang leader of Ganyu's 36 Roads Chain Village was killed by the grim demon. He was very satisfied with this script. He even began to imagine the scene of Guanzhaoshan being attacked by the Lulan heroes and dying tragically. Just thinking about it made him angry. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.